Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm going to start a new series, What If Deku Fell in Love with Hawk's Sister. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Her brother's wings were red. All they knew about him was that. On that terrible day, Kuri recalled her older sister Mana yelling, "Matsu! Binding!" as she saw my brother bound by Mana's blue feathers. Kuri discovered my dad's fate that day. To every outsider, to every man, they were all silenced by Grams. The feathers caught his mouth as he screamed. His wings were immobile. "Mu-du-ru, curse!" exclaimed Grams. As the rune appeared on her brother's chest, Kuri reached for his hand. She saw his memories fade and his eyes go blank. And she saw him take off in the air. Then Kuri also took off. Kuri caught him as he flew nervously through the air. She attempted to pronounce his name. However, the word had vanished. He gazed at her. "Who are you? Let go. Get away." She made him feel afraid and disgusted, as if her skin had burned him. They had difficulty. It was Kuri's first time using the lotus. Every word had to be earned. However, it had to work then. "GVA, here," exclaimed Kuri. Nothing. Her wings had a quirk, but they weren't responding. Kuri wasn't stronger than Grams, and she hadn't earned it. Strong, inaccessible Grams. Kuri dropped out of the sky. As Kuri fell, she realized her wings were no longer white and was encircled by black feathers. Kuri was also aware that she would never see her brother again. When Deku looked up, she saw a girl plummeting from the sky. He fell after barely catching her with his outstretched hand. He had been fleeing from Kachan, who had been making fun of him for wanting to attend UA, the hero school. Once more. She sobbed as she threw herself into his chest. "He's gone, I can't." "Who's gone? I'll help you," Deku said, caressing her hair. "My BR, she slammed her jaw. "Bridge, BR, brother," she stammered out. Deku assumed she had some sort of ailment that prevented her from speaking, and most likely took her brother as well. The girl gave him a wide-eyed look. She started shaking. "It'll be me next. Grams will make me do my duty," she said. Have to use my power, hold them all, seal it all, strip it all away." She fell. Hey, Deku continued to stroke her. "What's your name?" The girl appeared to consider it. At long last, she said, "Watanabe Kurisuda." He gave her a serious look and said, "Well, my name is Midoriya Izuku. And I won't let anything happen to you." Kuri wiped her face and said, "You must be really strong then. What's your quirk?" Izuku swallowed. I don't exactly have one." Kuri looked up at him and said, "Sure you do. Your quirk is hero." Being the only member of the family without wings, Reiko Kurama was limited to running. She intended to use Kitsune, her quirk, to shield her sister from her terrible fate. She therefore chased after her sister. When she caught her, she didn't know what to do. Would she bring her home? Is it possible for them to return to that? But didn't they have to? She stopped a man who was traveling in the same direction after running into him. With concern, Reiko asked, "Hey, have you seen a girl with wings come this way?" Bakugo retorted, "No, have you seen a damn nerd? Never mind, we'll look for the winged girl." "You're going to assist me?" Reiko gazed. He didn't seem like the kind. He yelled, "Shut up. Heroes always help." He looked up at the sky and said, "So she's flying, right?" Before blowing himself up. Reiko looked up. Damn. A few seconds later, he touched down. "She's with Deku, don't worry. Come on, keep up." The two hurried to meet Kuri and Deku. I really don't have AQ. Kuri looked up at Deku and gave him another hug, saying, "Shut up. You have a hero quirk. 'Cause you saved me, you're my hero." "Oi, Deku," exclaimed Bakugo. Wing Girl's sister was looking for her. I looked up at him and said, "Deku. Like Dekiru. 'Cause you're a hero." Sis, Deku means useless," exclaimed Bakugo. "Geez, are you stupid, Wing Girl?" Kuri gave a headshake. "Nope, it means Dekiru. You're stupid. Deku can do anything. He can't do shit. He's quirkless," Bakugo retorted. Kuri was equally obstinate when he said, "No. He has a hero quirk." Deku couldn't help but chuckle. It was strange, but she clung obstinately as if her viewpoint was the only reality, regardless of what Kachan said. It was adorable. He stroked her head. "You okay, now?" Reiko took her sister's hand and said, Yeah, I got her. We gotta go. Deku looked directly into Reiko's eyes. Will she be safe at home? Reiko smiled at him in a spooky way. I never said we were going home. Kuri waved and ran off with her sister, saying, bye. Bakugo glanced over at Deku and said, weirdos. But they are in big trouble, huh? Yeah, and we're gonna get him out of it. Deku, get out of the way. This is how it is. Deku sighed, thinking that this couldn't have been the case all along. Glaring at him, Bakugo said, you're not seeing it. Over there, above the trees, is a massive house. No, I didn't see, Kachan. Deku began to run. Hey, you shit, don't abandon me. Bakugo trailed closely behind him. Before the enormous, striking Japanese-style house, the two skidded to a halt. Bakugo exclaimed, shit, and Deku whispered, whoa. They went through the elaborate torii gate and were greeted right away by a stunning priestess. With her long dark hair, olive skin, honest brown eyes, white, flawless wings, and an aura of power that made the boys back off, she was exactly what you would expect from a priestess. I am Mana, the high priestess of this shrine, the woman said, bending slightly to their level as if sensing their mistrust. Today, my Grams, the Tenshi, is not in. How can I assist you? Both of them felt a wave of calm, and Bakugo, for once, appeared respectful. Was this a peculiarity of the Miko? The first to recover was Deku, who said, we came to tell you we are going to take care of Kuri and Reiko now. Yes, Bakugo interrupted, sounding less irate than usual, because they were afraid of you people. For an instant, the boys' emotions were their own, and they both wondered what Mana had done to the girls. However, her expression cleared, and Mana smiled softly. Please come in, she said. I'll get their belongings ready. Deku shrugged and followed Mana inside as Bakugo asked him a question. This is legal emancipation paperwork, Mana said, holding out 2 folders to the boys, having already quickly prepared everything. My signature is adequate because I have served as their legal guardian for 10 years. You're really lucky that Grams isn't here, she said, as if they ought to express gratitude to her for making it happen. Are you two able to handle this? PFF'd. Don't undervalue us, lady. Bakugo loaded up, and even though he didn't ask, he loaded Deku up. Leaning over Mana, Deku said, thank you very much, Oni-chan. Mana's expression softened as her face faltered once more. That obvious. With a firm gaze, Deku said, I'll come back and save you too. We will. They never forgot the bravery of the eldest member of the tragic Hikawa family, even after they left. The 4 reconnected at the park, where Bakugo and Deku were certain they lived. Hey, Bakugo approached her and said, come home with me, Kit. Well, what? He grabbed her and said, you heard me. Let's go. What are you discussing? Give me up. You are not living in a park at all. How did you? Reiko paused. Bakugo glared at her and said, I ain't letting you live here because I have a brain. Come on. My sister. Deku's got her. My stuff. Taken care of. After she had finally calmed down, Reiko raced Bakugo home. Try to catch me. As they departed, Deku looked at Kachan. Naturally, he had Reiko accompany him home. Deku sighed, wondering why he was so poor at this. No pressure, just persuade Kuri to accompany him home. Hey, Kuri, alright, let's go for a walk. Deku made a grab for her hand. So where are we walking to? Asked Kuri after taking it. Just strolling. Deku lied. He was headed to his dream and had just met All Might yesterday. But how could he ignore a girl in trouble while becoming a hero? He had to get stronger somehow, quickly, because Kuri needed him. Izuku. Kuri gave him a direct look. You used my first name, right? Deku gazed at her. Yes, since you were so aloof. Are you okay? Yes, but I nearly had a heart attack, Deku chuckled. Jesus. Kuri placed her hand on his chest and said, it's gonna be okay, I swear. I'll be good from now on. Distracted by the coldness of her hand, Deku said, yeah. Are you getting enough to eat and drink? The caged Kuri said, I do my best. Deku grabbed her hand and yelled, let me take care of you. Deku, what are you talking about? Kuri appeared a little alarmed. Deku released her and dialed it back. Me and Kachan couldn't take it, knowing your situation. Deku murmured, we went to your house last night. Kuri inhaled deeply. Are you in pain? Why are you still aware of my identity? You shouldn't have taken the chance, Deku. Cease. Yes, I took a chance. That's what heroes do. Curry became quiet for a while. What happened? All of the paperwork allowing you to live with me legally was signed by your older sister, along with some for your sister and Kachan. This keeps you too close to one another, but we don't want to split you up. And Kachan continued to insist. That made Curry laugh. You totally caved. Well, he has never been fond of anyone. Most of all, I was shocked. With a laugh, Curry said, except himself. Exactly. Deku looked at her and took her hand once more. So. Let's go home, Deku. Curry was walking with Deku when a slime villain grabbed him and almost possessed him. Curry was slammed to the ground, but her quirk prevented the slime villain from possessing her. Without warning, Texas Smash. The villain was vanquished by All Might. Curry swiftly flew home after witnessing his hero save Deku. She met Bakugo and Reiko en route, and the three of them headed to the mall. Katsu, look at this. The keychains of Eraserhead. Reiko smiled. Bakugo remarked, their All Might stuff is pretty dated. Curry sighed, I can't really find anything I like. I don't feel like I'm connecting with any of the heroes today. I long for the Senshi. Like a high-class store like this would have something as lame as the Sailor Senshi. You should respect them, Curry said with a scowl. They are legendary. Yeah, whatever. The slime villain abruptly grabbed Bakugo as he crossed the crosswalk. Oh no, Curry pushed her sister back. Don't. When it comes to possession, your quirk is weak. However, I must save him. You'll only end up in more trouble. Making eye contact with Deku, Curry argued. Deku charged at the slime villain. Knowing what was about to happen, Curry kept Reiko out of it, and naturally, All Might appeared. Curry waited for Deku that night. Hey, Curry, did you see? Deku ran inside. I was saved by All Might. Furthermore, why didn't you save me? Glancing down, Curry said, I couldn't. You felt afraid. No. Curry met his gaze and said, that was a meeting of destiny. I am not allowed to tamper with destiny. It's a peculiarity of mine. When it occurs, I am literally immobile. Deku sat down and said softly, that's awful. Do you want to hear what happened? Curry smiled and said, sure. After they sat down, Deku filled her in on the slime incident, one for all, and All Might. That's when Curry realized her quirk. Destiny was this. Are you sure this is okay? Curry asked, hovering over Deku's head. What makes me desirable to them? Laughing, Deku said, 'Cause you're awesome. I'm not a hero, Deku. And I say you are, he said, pulling her down to his level. He touched her wings and said, calm down. It was amusing how seeing her in this state soothed him. Now that they were together, there wasn't much of a problem. Deku grinned at her. After all, she was the one who turned him into a hero. The exam was about to start, so the two went into the arena. Katsu, are you anxious? Reiko's voice faltered as she asked. No way, Bakugo smiled. Kit, you also shouldn't be. You are amazing. Just don't take all the points, Reiko said, becoming a little more relaxed. Give me a little bit. Bakugo smiled and said, we don't really know how that'll work, but I know you won't have trouble getting your own points. After giving her a back pat, he entered. That kind of self-confidence must be nice, Reiko sighed. Fearful, Curry and Reiko glanced up at the enormous robots. Eat my fox fire, Reiko yelled as she threw Kitsunebi at them and fled in the opposite direction. Curry flew up to evaluate them and said, heavenly barrage. She struck them like arrows with a bunch of feathers. Then she went back to Deku's side, where things were not going well. She prevented the robots from harming him, but otherwise stayed out of his way and allowed him to do his thing. This would work out somehow, it had to. She was slapped out of the air after flying into it. Curry felt herself shatter and tumble into Deku's embrace. The enormous robot was approaching. Then, without warning, it was defeated by Deku. Curry gave him a feeble smile and said, observe us. We're a complete mess. But once again, Deku, you saved me. Bakugo glowered as he observed. To get him to turn away, Reiko tugged at his arm. He turned away as tiny explosions went off in his palm. Reiko remembered that he had something Deku would never have when he looked up at him. A gem. Let's get out of here, Bakugo said, kissing Reiko on the cheek. Get away from that fucking nerd. After seeing her face, he grimaced a little before grinning once more. Indeed, he possessed a treasure. Curry trembled as she held the envelope to her chest. Deku squeezed her hand and urged, you can do this. The most startling aspect of yesterday's results was not Deku's acceptance but rather the condition attached to Kuri and Reiko's acceptance. You must obtain legal emancipation and become Eraserhead, the instructor showed to Aizawa's guardian. Reiko smiled as she read it once more. Eraserhead. Since Eraserhead was compelled to collaborate with Grams, she had become an ardent admirer and had eliminated her eccentricity in front of them. Because of this, Kuri had to acknowledge that she was also a fan. She knew that Aizawa could keep them safe from Grams' wrath, but who would do it now? Deku and Bakugo, who entered first and stood guard in front of them, both gave her a reassuring response to her question. Mana, their older sister, stood there with elegance and beauty. Grams was, conveniently, absent, and Mana was alone, just as Deku had previously described her. It was hard for Kuri to believe. They were under Mana's protection. Mana extended her hand for the papers and said, "Hand it over, my little sisters. Don't worry, she's not here, and she thinks the two of you are at Inari Jinja, training with Koinu. And she'll keep thinking that, for as long as you need." Mana smiled slyly at them. Reiko appeared stunned by everything. Was Mana assisting them? Mana, who upheld all of Grams' regulations. The adorable little Miko who catered to Grams' every need. Scorned by the quirk, the legitimate heiress of Tenchi was passed over for Kuri. Mana is mean, hateful, and vindictive. They had her on their side. As their elder gave them the paperwork, both sisters blinked up at her. Mana knelt and spoke in a voice suffocated by tears, each word a struggle. "Find, BR brother. Find HHH Hawks." The three sisters briefly experienced the same anguish, with tears streaming down their faces. Then, for the first time in years, the two younger sisters gave their elder a hug and said, "Thank you, and goodbye." Squeezing her sister's hand, Kuri straightened her uniform. After moving into Aizawa's yesterday, they were reunited. Deku was sorely missed by Kuri. He gave her a sense of security. Deku was at home. However, she needed to stop depending on him. She possessed unique abilities and a peculiarity. And there was that small pastime that nobody was aware of. Kuri shoved her sketchbook deeper into her backpack. It was not necessary for anyone to know. She shook her head after glancing longingly at the support course lab. She belonged in the hero course. Sister was present. Deku as well. Deku was present. She sank into her seat after letting out a long, painful sigh. Abruptly, Deku rushed in and positioned himself beside her. Kuri chuckled and ruffled his hair, asking, "Have trouble waking up without me? Like I always say, you have no skills with your curls." Deku twiddled his hair and said, "Hey, they aren't that bad, are they?" "They aren't bad for a boy," Kuri remarked. "But if you were a girl, no one would ask you out." As Aizawa walked in, Deku turned to face forward and joked, "I don't need anyone else." Reiko was anxious as well. Because of her anthropomorphic quirk, many people perceived her as cunning and sexy like a fox, which she wasn't. When she wasn't looking, Bakugo came in and led her inside by grabbing her arm. He smiled and sat her down, saying, "There's no use in just staring from a distance. Gotta get the full experience." Reiko's face lit up with a tiny smile. "It's better now that you're here." The compliment caused Bakugo to flush. "Ha, you don't totally suck either." That was Bakugo's best effort. At that, Reiko grinned. However, it was superior. Much better. As Aizawa began the lesson, they turned to face forward. Kuri observed Bakugo displaying his peculiarity. Really, an examination, and the lowest was kicked out. That seemed a little too drastic. And this was the man who was now looking out for her. If she wasn't good enough, would he throw her out? With a shudder, Kuri grasped the ball. With her left hand, she held it out in front of her, and with her right, she pulled the invisible bowstring. Sacred arrow, hit, the mark. Instead of flying into the air, the feather she was aiming with the ball struck one of the targets set up for additional tests as it flew forward. Kuri put her arms down and made contact with the floor. All right, that was a little misleading. She never made contact with the floor. Her wings remained strong as she hovered a centimeter above the ground. When she got back to her spot near Deku, she saw that he appeared to be in a lot of distress. She placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Relax. You can do this." Gentle touch. Occasionally, she spoke without understanding why. She was informed by her clairsentience quirk. She inherited her clear feeling, or clairsentience from her family. The clair quirk resided in their wings, which they were all born with. Clear seeing was Mana's clairvoyance, clear smelling was Reiko's, and clear knowing was Graham's. Clear hearing was the term for their mother's clairaudience. Through the use of various body parts, the clairs gave them access to knowledge that an average person would not be able to. Graham's was undoubtedly the strongest and most difficult to avoid. She didn't know what Hawks possessed. The heiress had her quirk bound to the lotus when she was 5 years old. It was as though letters were burned onto her bound wings. It hurt like hell. However, that was how she had caused the arrow to fly. Ran-Ji-Yu, the rune for bravery, was what she had used. It appeared as a bow and arrow. When Deku succeeded in throwing the ball and proving himself to Aizawa, Kuri joyfully clapped her hands. That meant he would not be expelled after all. Excited to show Kuri his new notes, Deku looked up. She would never let him see her notes, but she seemed strangely interested in every one she took and always added them to her own. She entered at that point, with Todoroki Shoto grasping his hand. After giving him a pained glance, she sat down with Todoroki. Deku hurried to her desk. Kuri, what's going on? Why are you with Todoroki? They had seemed close to him. What had taken place? I'm sorry, Midoriya, she muttered. We're going to have to just be friends. Todoroki is my boyfriend now. Todoroki gave her a consenting squeeze. You'd better run along, Midoriya. There was a subtle threat in his words. Deku went to his desk and sat down, feeling confused and hurt. No, he muttered. He needed to find out what was going on. The battle trials started, with Todoroki and Kuri on one team and Deku and Reiko on the other. This could be his opportunity to learn more. Kuri said, "Okay, Shoko." The moniker made Deku wince. You can hold them off. Shouldn't be a problem if you actually use your quirk. I'll stay with the weapon. Don't hold back. After giving her a fierce look, Todoroki went into the hallway. Deku let out a relieved sigh. They sounded nothing like lovers. There was something strange happening. Reiko was also observing the tension with a somewhat dejected expression. Deku started to ask her but changed his mind. We might be able to get by them if they are not getting along. From a distance, he looked worriedly at Kuri. Deku nearly lost his opportunity as the ice shot out at them. However, he managed to slip past Kuri and catch up to him. Zoo, hi. Kuri began to hover and waved joyfully. Hey Kuri. Deku grinned brightly. Thus, she continued to like him. Can we talk? Kuri gave a headshake. Can't. He avoided the feathers she was aiming at him. Kuri, come on, why are you with Todoroki? Kuri opened his mouth to speak. He was reminded of that night long ago when she attempted to explain about her brother as he watched her struggle. Deku remarked, it's your Grams again, huh? And now Endeavor is involved. Kuri gave a nod. She raised her hand and said, they're friends. And so are we, now. Just friends. I'm sorry, Deku. Deku cast a wild glance around. Not a place to flee. When Kuri yelled, Ran-Ji-Yu. Courage, heavenly barrage, her attacking feathers flew in his direction. Deku was able to avoid her and punch her. Delaware smash. Kuri took off. Reiko, meanwhile, was avoiding Todoroki's ice with ease. Seriously, it's ice all on one side. It's not practical, Reiko exclaimed, chuckling as she considered everything from the perspective of a genuine support course participant. Todoroki cocked his head. Not practical, nope, smiled Reiko. It's unbalanced. She was frozen by Todoroki. What about that? Still impractical. Reiko firmly said, yes. Still impractical. At that moment, the bell rang, indicating that Deku had received the weapon. Todoroki melted the ice with a hand. Reiko muttered, Shoto, we'll find a way out of this. I won't allow you to be forced into marriage like your mother was. Todoroki gazed into her sorrowful eyes. I just want Kuri to be freed. In a whisper, Reiko said, don't worry. I won't let this happen. Todoroki came over to where Kuri and Deku were sleeping in the nurse's station. She detested herself because she knew what was coming. Acting in the play. Todoroki sat down and said, I came to visit. What's Midoriya doing here? Todoroki. Deku stumbled. I helped her here. Todoroki scowled at him and asked, why did you punch her? What kind of hero hits a girl like that? Kuri winced. One of Todoroki's annoyances was that he wasn't acting. He was genuinely angry now. I didn't mean to. Exclaimed Deku. I really didn't. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for her to get hurt. Todoroki continued to glare. If you hurt her again, you will answer to me, Midoriya. Kuri let out a sigh. That's what he truly meant. Deku would now believe Todoroki was truly in love with her. It would obstruct any possibility of escape from this arrangement. Kuri whispered, Midoriya. Kuri gave him a sorrowful look and said, you better go. Later, she would have to find him and give an explanation. Deku hurried off, saying, I'll see you later. Todoroki faced her. Are you hurt? Kuri sighed and looked up at him, saying, nah. No need to go so nuts. He's gonna think you're a jerk. Todoroki squared his shoulders and said, yeah well. I'm not in love with you, but you're still a beautiful young woman. Men shouldn't hit women, ever. Kuri touched him on the shoulder. She burst out laughing. I get it, chill. You're weird. When Deku heard Kuri's voice, he stopped. Zoo. Deku raised his gaze to her. Kuri, you shouldn't be running. Kuri smiled sheepishly and said, oh, yeah. She knelt down and examined his legs, saying, but you have super legs. It was hard to catch up. Bad legs. Too fast. But very aesthetically appealing. Deku reddened. What are you doing? Kuri took off. I was having a discussion with your legs. None of your business. Deku was extremely agitated and asked, why? Kuri hovered over him and said, I'm really sorry about Shoko. He didn't have to be so mean. He's jealous. But can't we be friends? Deku could tell she truly desired more from the longing look she gave him. However, they were unable to have it just yet. Deku grinned at her and said, we already are. Kuri grinned back, cool. But you've gotta make it clear to everyone that we're friends. The fear in her voice was audible to Deku. Somehow he had to get her free. Why? So you don't get your ass kicked, Kuri said, attempting to be humorous. Deku yelled, I won't get my ass kicked. Kuri touched his face and gave him a longing glance. Please. Deku sighed and smiled conspiratorially at her, saying, alright. I like it when you call me Zoo. Kuri reddened deeply and hurried away. Deku smiled, now completely certain. She wanted him, and he would set her free so they could be together. The USJ exercise was about to begin. Kuri was always halfway in the air as she bounced on her feet. She couldn't wait to showcase her skills. However, she felt strange. Her clairsentience, a peculiarity, was warning her that something negative was about to occur. Discreetly, she looked at her classmates. What could she do, and which of them was doomed? It seemed like fate had no control over anything. Kuri let out a sigh. It's best not to think about it. At which point she was taken away. She swiftly folded her wings at the last second to hide her flying ability from the villains. After landing smoothly, she became aware that Deku was with her. Kuri exclaimed, Zoo, they didn't see my wings. And spread them. I'm gonna fly you to land, then get help. Kuri exclaimed, extending her arms. Deku paused. What about the villains? Furious at herself for not following her gut, Kuri hurriedly exclaimed, we don't have time to fight them, and I don't want you to get hurt. Her eyes darted around, searching for danger. Deku tried not to enjoy it too much as she settled into her arms and said, got it. Just be careful, okay? Kuri took off. The explosions knocked Kuri out of the sky. I'm gonna put you in the center. Kacchan is coming your way, so, Kuri exclaimed. Kuri, exclaimed Deku. Bakugo caught them in no time. Damn it, what the hell? Kuri gives him a blink. Why'd you, ouch, shit my wing. Bakugo was horrified by himself and shocked. Did I? A terrified expression flickered over his face. Kacchan, you hurt her, exclaimed Deku. Kuri gave a firm shake of her head. Kuri called him by his first name. No. It wasn't him. It wasn't you, Katsuki. It was a villain. And even if it was your quirk, I flew into it, so, don't look like that. Bakugo paused. Are you sure? Deku stared at them incredulously. But that. Kuri got to her feet and, with some effort, folded her wings behind her back. Yeah, both of you calm the fuck down. Katsuki, Bakugo, you did not hurt me. Got it, she firmly stated, hoping to charm her sisters into believing her. Her forearm suddenly blazed with a new rune. She said in a whisper, okay. She put both hands on Bakugo's shoulders and said, we do. Trust me. Bakugo nodded and relaxed a little. Let's deal with these fuckers. Kuri nodded. and they made their way to the entrance while taking a deep breath and looking at the central plaza. Curry attempted to fly but skidded to a stop, saying, "NNH. Cat, Zoo, I'm gonna try to get the other students out of here." When Reiko came into the clearing, she saw Aizawa in pain. "Sensei," she exclaimed as she dashed forward, but a flurry of feathers abruptly stopped her. Curry exclaimed, "Don't," before collapsing with a cry of agony. Her sister rushed to assist. Deku and Bakugo hurried in front of her in a protective manner. Tamura grinned. Bakugo shuddered as Tamura turned to face him and said, "You're the Tenshi's bitch, aren't you? We know all about you. The role you play is almost as nauseating as the symbol of peace. Good job knocking her out of the game, boy." "Stop it," cried Curry. "If you're mad at me then attack me." Tamura gave his neck a scratch. He asked in a bored tone, "Is there even a point? He's already finished you off for me." Reiko whispered to Deku, "He wants to kill All Might. I heard him say so." Tamura was attacked by Bakugo. "I didn't do shit, you crusty bastard." Curry's eyes grew wide as he realized Tamura was a threat. Before Tamura could disintegrate him, she yanked him back with trembling hands and yelled, "Stop." Like a kindergartner who has just lost his favorite toy, Tamura exclaimed, "Ah. You aren't even demoralized. Dull. Miko, didn't you save him with your charming lies? One day, you'll be a Tenshi, won't you?" Destroying and sealing. With a feather in his mouth, Curry growled, "Enough." When All Might appeared, Curry shook. "It's over." Bakugo turned on Curry after the fight, saying, "Why did you stop me?" "I don't want you to get disintegrated," Curry said, looking up at him sorrowfully. "I would be depressed." Deku stared at Curry in disbelief, wondering what her peculiarity could ruin. Bakugo sighed, "You ought to be more concerned about yourself. It's you who's hurt." "Yeah, I'm fine," Curry said, nodding as she looked up at him. "That is irrelevant. The presence of All Might is a good thing. Otherwise, that man would be dead. Because no one talks to my friends that way," Curry said, catching her feather as it flew off him, covered in blood. Her mind was racing with agony and suffering as she got up and went to the nurse. Deku chased after her, leaving Bakugo furious behind him. Curry halted, turned away, and began to cry. "Deku, get out of here. You're here to tell me to leave because you despise me. You don't need to express it. I am aware. What makes me hate you?" Perplexed, Deku inquired. And you weren't born with one." Curry admitted, "I can destroy quirks." Curry turned and went back to the nurse's office. She knew this was going to happen, so why was she crying? After all, All Might had no quirks, and this conflict had started because he had rejected her quirk. She wiped her tears and returned inside angrily. "Bakugo, she was blown away by you." Todoroki screamed at him. "Oh no." Curry came running in. What the hell are you talking about, icy hot?" exclaimed Bakugo. "Curry was blown up by you." Todoroki said it again. "No, that isn't what took place." Bakugo uttered a defensive statement. Todoroki chuckled without humor. "Did she tell you that? The battle was in its midst. She needed to help you concentrate. Bakugo, you blew her up. Her wing was broken by you." Curry looked down as the trust rune vanished and her quirk finally failed her. The bitter Todoroki remarked, "She really fooled you." "I didn't, Bakugo trembled, fists clenched, and he didn't look up. Curry forced herself not to look at Deku as he entered. "Shoko, Deku, out, Ma Nu, banish," Curry screamed, and the door slammed as they were ejected. Curry gave him a hug and said, "Come here, Bakugo." Why did you lie to me?" Bakugo growled at her. Curry gave him a hug. "Please don't ask me that. I can't answer you," she wept. "I'm sorry. But I did fucking hurt you. It was my fault," Bakugo exclaimed, trying not to cry. "No you don't." Curry turned to face him in his tears. "Don't say that." Curry raised his chin and made eye contact. "Please stop. I'm sorry I flew into it. Besides, I'm all healed now. I was desperate to get Zoo to a safe place, and I was trying to ride the explosions so I could get there faster." "Shut up. You shouldn't have been doing stupid shit like that to begin with." "Why would you do that?" Bakugo responded. Curry tried to shift the topic away from his suffering by saying, "I was being an idiot. I'm sorry I'm such a colossal dumbass." Bakugo gave her a fierce look. "And stop taking the blame. Then stop hurting. Please stop hurting. What can I do? Want me to hit you and make us even?" Curry pleaded. Bakugo whispered, do something damn it. Kuri gave him a forceful punch. Okay. There. Hurts. Feel better. In all honesty, Kuri was merely striking him to alter his expression. Bakugo gazed at her in disbelief. Kuri broke down once more. I hate that look on your face, the pain. So please forgive yourself. I'll do anything, anything. Just stop looking at me like that, cat. All right. Bakugo averted his gaze. Kuri rushed over to him. Cat, I can make the pain go away, if you want. My quirk. Bakugo scowled at her and said, no. Stop trying to take on everyone's pain. Worry about yourself too. But I want to be a hero. Bakugo felt a smile appear on his own face as he observed her eager smile. He gave her a head pat. You're a hero already, so quit trying so damn hard or you'll self-destruct like that damn nerd. Kuri smiled. You are grinning, I observed. Smile. Kuri reached out to give him a tickle. Idiot, Bakugo muttered as he took hold of her hands and fled. He's all right, Kuri. I swear, Deku reassured her. I made him feel better. Kuri rubbed her chest and said, but something in him feels strange. Confused, the pain subsided. What are you saying? Curious, Deku inquired. Kuri eyed Todoroki and said, forget it. Not knowing how well she could battle Deku, Kuri flew up to the arena because she didn't want to harm him. Entering the arena, Deku swung his fists, prepared for action. He didn't really want to fight either, but if Kacchan could fight the girl he liked, Reiko, then so could he. Kuri stayed in the air, cautious of his leaping assaults. At that moment, a jump punch through her. Detroit smash. Kuri winced as she skidded across the arena floor. She could no longer play nice because her left wing was broken. Kuri suddenly realized that she was observing Grams. She muttered softly, I apologize, Deku. However, this is where your journey ends. Heavenly barrage, she exclaimed, raising her left hand. Like arrows, her feathers descended upon Deku. Looking for feathers, she held up 2 fingers. Hit the mark. Deku struggled as the feathers pursued him throughout the arena, eventually pinning him. Kuri moved toward him while holding her wing and said, I'm so sorry. She put her hands on his head and said, this is the end. She met his eyes and said, Shinny. Hopelessness. While panting and struggling to remain conscious and upright, Deku screamed in pain but was able to raise his fists and slam her out of the ring. Kuri fled the arena while lying there, stunned, gazing into his tormented eyes. Deku fell to the ground in agony. Kuri gave herself a hug before passing out in the corridor. Grams came over. Oh, that's good. You seem to be aware of how painful your loss is. Grams pressed her finger into the rune of despair, saying, I don't even have to show you. Feel the pain. Feel it. This is what happens when you lose. You had sympathy for the enemy again. You can't do that. It's his pain, not yours. Can't you use your quirk without hurting yourself yet? You're soft. What if he was a villain? Grams continued to stroke the rune. Deku saw them as he staggered into the hallway. Stop it. Get away from her. Even if it meant losing his life, he forced his damaged body to be a hero and defend her by moving to attack. Grams roared ahead. Kuri blinked at that precise moment, and all of a sudden she was in between them. Her body seemed to move on its own, even though she couldn't recall doing so. Grams jumped back in shock as she pressed her finger into Kuri's chest rather than Deku's. Are you a fool, taking the death rune? Kuri gave her a fierce look. So you were gonna treat him like a villain? Startled, Deku swiftly dragged her behind him. How are you still alive? Grams asked. Gasped. What? Exclaimed Deku. Had this woman threatened to murder him? And Kuri had taken that kind of shot on his behalf. Kuri touched her shoulder and said, she used the death rune. I should be dead, but I'm not, 'cause of this, my new rune. Mano, the only one you don't have. Love is weakness, spat Grams, and if you love this weak fool, he will die. Before Deku could defend himself, Kuri interrupted him. That's not a threat, is it? No. Grams let out a sorrowful sigh. Grams departed, but not before taking a long look at All Might in the stands. It's simply the truth. Deku started to say something, but then stopped. Kuri gets up and frowns. It's all right, Deku. She's just a sad bitter old woman deep down. Deku objected, but you're hurt. She tried to kill me, and almost killed you. We have to do some. Kuri touched his lips with her finger. You already saved me from her, remember? That's why I'm living with Aizawa-sensei. Deku took a deep breath and said, yeah, I know, but that doesn't make it okay. And it doesn't make you safe. That's why I'm gonna protect you. Curry averted his gaze. I don't deserve that after what I made you feel. You screamed. I made you scream. Deku put his hand on her shoulder. You didn't hold back. I'm glad. Curry touched his face and exclaimed, I hated it. Damn it, I don't want to make you suffer any more than you already do. Look at you. Grabbing her face, Deku made her turn to face him. That's why I'm gonna get stronger. So you don't cry when I fight. My quirk isn't supposed to make people cry. So smile, okay? He smiled and pinched her cheeks until she burst out laughing. Stop it, Zoo. Deku chuckled. We're both a mess. Let's go get fixed up. To avoid being blown up, Reiko blocked his hands and bounced on the balls of her feet. Bakugo danced back, being cautious not to get too close to her charms. She was nearly out of bounds when Bakugo blew her across the stadium. Damn, so fucking close. Layering enchantments, Reiko runs up to him and says, NNGH. Damn, that's my line. Bakugo instantly retreated, her peculiarity blurring his vision and giving the impression that there were numerous Reikos everywhere. Damn, where are you? Reiko smiled as his quirk wavered erratically in his hands. Is something wrong? She shoved him in the direction of the boundary line after prodding him in the chest. She was blown out of the ring by Bakugo's ability to grab her and spin them. His vision cleared as soon as she was gone. Shit, I got you. Damn, that was way too close. Reiko hunched over and coughed. She chuckled a little and said, I didn't wanna win anyway. Bakugo took a quick look. Yeah, good. After a moment, he assisted Reiko in standing up after she nodded. That was damn close. You got some kick-ass moves, ya know that. I do. Reiko exclaimed, startled, but ya gave it your fucking all and I respect the hell out of that. Reiko grinned. I'm glad. It was fun fighting you. Bakugo shook his head and said, let's get our asses to recovery, girl. I can't fight all fucking enchanted. Reiko chuckled. Curry was interning at her Gram's agency, Hagoromo, a few weeks after the sports festival. She had to endure a lot of criticism and training, and she was only permitted to leave when she was able to have a vision. At that point, Grams had to give in, letting her leave the agency and go to where Stain was. When questioned about whether she would receive a backup, Grams simply sneered and advised her to be capable of managing herself if she truly wanted to play the hero. Curry then set out to locate Deku. Curry scouted from the air and soon caught up to him. She touched down in front of him. Zoo, you have to come with me. Hurry. Deku gave a startled jump. What's wrong? What happened? Did you get hurt? Curry took his hand and said, no. But Iida needs us. I don't care about saving citizens. But he's my friend. Deku nodded hastily. Let's go then. He's my friend too. Curry held out her arms firmly and said, we're gonna fly. Ready. Deku took her hand and nodded. Will you be able to carry me? Curry drew him into her arms and said, yeah. I've actually been training. Ready? She asked, flapping her wings. Deku grinned. I'm ready. Curry took off into the sky. Curry was taking it a little easier so he wouldn't get sick or anything. This isn't your first time flying, is it? You flew with all might, nay. Yeah, that wasn't really flying. This is really cool. You can do so much with it. Deku exclaimed with delight. It's great for rescues. I can just yank the victim into the air, as long as they aren't hurt. But I'm practicing a move called Feather Cocoon for that. Curry was beaming with pride. That'd be perfect to help injured people. Curry landed at that precise moment. Curry squeezed his hand and said, before you go rushing in there, you should know that I'm not leaving your side, Izuku Midoriya. Deku nodded. I know you won't. We are gonna do this together. I need you to engage him directly, but try to avoid my attacks at the same time. Can you do that? Are you fast enough? Curry responded. Deku thought it was the ideal moment to try out full cowling and said, I'm pretty fast, yeah. I can do that. Running in, Curry knelt beside Iida. Curry touched him and said, Iida, you're paralyzed, nay. I see that more self-proclaimed heroes are here to meet judgment at the end of my blade. Stain said. Run. Get out of here. Iida moaned. Deku replied, not happening. And we aren't here to meet your judgment. Iida, I'm going to try to cure you, but first I have to help Deku. I'll keep you behind me so you won't get hit. Curry gave him a feather to hold. Hold this and my quirk won't touch you. exclaimed Curry as she soared. Iida sobbed, no you can't just. Deku started battling Stain. In the air, Curry stumbled, enthralled with Deku's full cowling. Deku took note. Focus Miko. Deku ducked under the blow. Curry stood up straight. I think it's time for my special move. Da-ra, storm. Curry exclaimed as she spun around, the wind picking up and accelerating her feathers, pinning Stain. Stain grinned. Interesting. Tenchi decided to make her successor a hero. Deku glared at Stain as she landed in front of Iida after dodging her feathers. I'm not a hero. You hurt my friends. That's what matters to me. You hurt them, replied Curry. Stain cut her ankle after jumping on a dumpster, but she smiled at Deku and said, yes. But that's exactly what makes you a hero, fledgling. He immobilized her by licking the blood, saying, better catch her, hero. When Curry's wings stopped moving and she fell, she let out a choked scream. After catching her and putting her down, Deku became enraged and attacked Stain. Curry smiled up from the floor. Oi Stain. If you know about Tenchi, then you should know something. Our quirks aren't in our bodies. R2. Restrain. They are in our feathers. Deku's blood was licked by Stain. Stain snapped the restraints and held up a red feather, saying, Tenchi, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Curry gasped for air. What did you do? Deku fell and struggled to get away. You've really ruined things for me, Stain said, bending down to tilt Curry's chin upward. I really wanted to murder you. To demonstrate to All Might that he would no longer be constrained. Unfortunately, though, you've taken me by surprise, fledgling. Maybe, unlike your treacherous grandmother, you won't chain him. Furthermore, it is impossible to kill this boy. But you, fueled by Stain approached Iida. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Curry placed her hands on his head and said, what did you do to my brother, you monster? Todoroki stormed in, grabbing her with his ice and dragging her away from the villain. Todoroki glanced at her, aware that she was going to murder him. I won't let you touch her ever again, Deku growled at Stain. When Curry realized she had nearly killed Stain, she slumped in the ice and tried to calm herself. Todoroki and Deku eliminated Stain. You didn't think we were you. Afterward, Todoroki said, glancing at her. I apologize. Curry held up the red feather and said, I couldn't control myself when I saw this. My only thought was that I had to force him to tell me what he had done to HHH. How are you certain that he even injured your brother? Todoroki questioned with astonishment. Curry hung her head and gasped, saying, I swear, I'll tell you next time. Deku approached. He's right. He may have just found that feather. After witnessing her nearly kill Stain, Curry was upset, asking, Zu, you didn't see that, did you? Still fixated on Stain's touch, Deku remarked, yes I did. I didn't like the way he did that. Startled that he wasn't upset with her, Curry asked, but, about what I had done. I'm not angry at you. Why not? Deku shrugged and asked, did you want me to be? I'm upset that you tried to kill him. But I was more angry that he touched you. He turns to look away. Curry burst out laughing. Stupid. I was way more wrong. Zu, you're a hero, you can't think like Tot. Todoroki gave her a shoulder tap. Shit. Curry. Endeavor. Curry gave a blink. Shit. Curry turned and gave Todoroki a fast kiss. With a sorrowful sigh, Deku approached Iida. That was hard to watch, Midoriya. Miko kissed him right in front of you. Iida replied. I understand. Deku sighed, but she had to. Did I have the same angry eyes when I attacked Stain as she did when she attacked him? Iida muttered. Deku acknowledged. Yes you did. A hush fell. I was unaware that Miko had a brother. Did you? Iida inquired. Deku admitted. Why yeah I kinda did. Then I understand perfectly well how she felt in that moment, Iida murmured. You know what I felt when I realized she was going to kill Stain. Jealous. Deku answered, I know. But that doesn't make a hero. I am aware of that, and so is she, Midoriya. Take a good look at her face. I never realized how much she was suffering until now. Curry carried her enormous backpack on her back. Todoroki bent forward. Let me help you. No way. Curry protested. Everything is training Shoko. Bakugo retorted. She's got a point, icy hot. Deku smiled at her and asked, you got it, Curry? Curry chuckled before turning to face Deku. Ooh, Zu, come here, she exclaimed, ducking into her bag. Turning to her, Deku asked, what's up? Curry gave him a pair of gloves. These will temporarily repair the nerves in your arms and hands, until I can do it myself. Prolonged use will heal them completely. So you can smash. Deku smiled at her, oh, thanks, and accepted them. Sheesh, you need to be more careful. I try. Deku sulked. You always do. Curry acknowledged. Curry looked up at him and said, please take care of yourself, okay? Deku firmly stated, you do the same. Bakugo bent down beside Reiko. Reiko, you prepared for this? Reiko smiled at him and said, yep. As ready as I'll ever be. Baku pumped his fist and declared, I'm gonna kick ass. You got any hot Cheetos for me? He was given a bag by Reiko. I got one for myself too. Bakugo contentedly munched. Damn, that's good. Reiko chuckled. You like spicy stuff. Bakugo smiled. I love 'em. Reiko chuckled a little. She nuzzled Bakugo after he petted her. Curry took a seat beside Todoroki and glanced at Deku. Deku gave her a smile. Todoroki grabbed Curry's arm as she waved. Todoroki warned, you need to be careful. If rumors spread about you and Midoriya, he could be hurt. Curry sighed, I get it. We're just friends. I won't go further. I promise. And I won't let her hurt you either, Shoko. Todoroki answered, you still need to be careful. I can handle myself. Curry put a hand to his cheek. Be strong. Everything will end once I achieve Shakan. When I finally earn it, she will be powerless. I just have to prove myself as a Miko. This sort of thing, avoiding one's true desires and such, that's holy right. That's her version of holy, it shouldn't be yours. Curry gave a sorrowful smile. But she must be a very sad old woman then, nay. When the bus came to a stop, they disembarked. Curry took off quickly. She buzzed around wildly, saying, I hate being caged like that. Angrily, Bakugo waved his hands around his head. Oi bird bitch, calm the fuck down. Sis, calm yourself please. Reiko tried. Curry, come down here, called Deku. Coming down, Curry said, K. Curry and Reiko participated in the test of courage as partners. Reiko's ears perked up at the sounds. Curry's silver eyes were fixed on the mountain. Izuku. Reiko said, something's wrong, isn't it? Curry flinched. Her suffering was Deku's suffering. Curry clutched the tree and said, yes, he's fighting. He's being reckless again. Reiko seized her and said, come on. She was concerned for Bakugo and said, let's go see if we can't help. Hold on. You can't do that, Curry said, gradually losing consciousness. What should I do? Help. Why? Keep him safe, Curry said, grabbing her and launching her into the air, dropping her in front of Bakugo. Curry faltered at the agony, I have to save Deku. Curry took off. What's got Birdie all upset? Bakugo asked, glancing up at the sky. Sighing, Reiko said, Midoriya. Curry arrived at the battle. Deku appeared to be in utter ruin as he battled Muscular. When Curry saw the damage, he growled, heavenly barrage. Curry stopped Deku from fighting again. Zoo, back off. You were hurt by him. I own him. She let out a furious cry. Curry, take caution. Deku responded with a shout. What is this? One more. Muscular smiled. Curry flipped and landed on his back, pressing her hands to his temples, saying, oh, you should not be a smirking bitch. Disuri. I'm exhausted. When she released her hold, Muscular's head trembled, his eyes rolled back, and he flushed. He then fell to the ground. Curry gave Deku a slap after he ran over. What was that used for? Deku exclaimed in surprise. To keep him safe, you didn't have to go alone. Other individuals were present, and, Curry clutched the tree. I was the only one who knew where he was, Deku said, holding her up. You've been doing it again, haven't you? You could have asked for help. And now, if you won't protect yourself, then protect me, Deku. Curry flew up, demonstrating to him that she was the one who was hurt and mangled, not him. This time, I took all the pain. Curry. Deku chased after her. The battlefield was covered in teeth. Bakugo retreated, saying, whoa. The teeth struck, advancing to make the kill. Curry released her feathers and flew above them, saying, looking for feathers, Rajay. Light. Curry wavered in agony and said, come on, one more. Curry sent glowing feathers to everyone, saying, that will guide them in the dark. One more, please. As Curry landed in his arms, Deku crushed the feather in his fist. The pain was so intense that he was barely able to stand, but he persisted because he had to protect her, just as she had protected him. Kuri took hold of him and they made their way back to the main camp. Bakugo turned to face Reiko in the meantime. Your peculiarity. Get some plants that emit a counteracting gas so you can use sense. Sheepish, Reiko counteracted the gas with her plants so he could use his explosions. Bakugo's hands exploded with booms. Now we're talking. Reiko smiled and battled beside him, fending off the gas. Deku fled after Bakugo after Kuri landed, and Kuri proceeded to be attacked by Dark Shadow. Get away, I can't, Tokiyami was whining. Shibi, Kuri said with a simple smile. It's okay, Kuri said, stroking Dark Shadow's head. You're frightening your friend, so stop now. Is Tokiyami your closest friend? Kuri tapped the active rune on her shoulder and helped him up, saying, but I can't do anything else, so you'll have to protect me. If I'm here we can keep him calm. Where the hell is Deku? Bakugo asked, glancing around. Reiko gestured to the figure that was getting closer. Run to them, Deku exclaimed, Kachan. You're there afterwards. You're late, Deku. Bakugo shot back, and I'm fine. Deku sighed and said, we still can't let them get you. Hi, Katsu, can we at least make sure you don't get taken? Reiko asked with a worried expression. All right, in any case, Bakugo complained. Himiko knocked Kuri down. Tokiyami. To keep the Dark Shadow from going crazy again, Kuri threw him a glowing feather. Locate Kachan and keep him safe. The strongest shadow here is the Dark One. Proceed. Quote. Himiko smiled and said, you look really lovely. Give me a little of your blood. Leave. Tokiyami fled into the darkness. As they had intended, Tokiyami's shadow went crazy, eliminating the enemy, and Reiko held Bakugo back in the shadows. Both of them witnessed Kuri and Deku land, with Kuri running to Tokiyami's side. I swear if that damn nerd. You're safe, Kachan. Deku rushed over. Shut up, Bakugo yelled, I don't need your assistance. The signal was a dazzling burst of silver light. Listen to me, cat, Reiko said, drawing Bakugo along at her side. You won't be abducted. Kuri's prophecies were always accurate, and Reiko said this primarily to persuade herself. Bakugo disappeared from her grasp as if to satisfy her fears. After landing, Kuri lunged at the annoying magician who had committed the crime. She protected herself and Deku from further suffering by pushing him back. Deku triumphantly grabbed the Bakugo ball. Deku quit him. As Kuri lifted Deku and hurled him in the direction of the enemy with her feather flight, the darkness grew darker. Grab him, Reiko sobbed in agony. Deku made contact. Abruptly, Reiko appeared at his side and took Bakugo's hand. Then he released it. As the greatest villain in history emerged, Kuri, Deku, Reiko, Iida, and Kirishima all hid in fear and tried to remain silent. However, Kuri's response was peculiar, her whole body tensed, and she started to approach him. Stunned, Todoroki seized her. Kuri, quit, he muttered. Don't, sis. Reiko also grabbed her. The third person to grab her was Deku, who was taken aback by what she said next. With power dancing on her fingers, she growled, all, for, one. At the time, Deku was genuinely terrified at the thought of Kuri fighting that villain, and the very thought triggered one for all in his own fingers. He had no idea what that meant, but he knew it was important. Deku growled at her, now isn't the time Kuri, we can't fight. Kuri immediately snapped out of it and turned to face Deku. One, for, all, indeed. Deku held her close as they retreated into the shadows, determined to prevent her from engaging in combat with the frightful villain. No fighting. All Might showed up at that point and started fighting. Kuri's grandmother appeared on the battlefield and took the blow intended for All Might, shocking everyone as they all gasped as All for One went in for the kill. Deku held Kuri tightly as she lurched forward. Todoroki was the first to react, covering Kuri's mouth and eyes with his hand and saying, don't look. When Reiko saw it, she covered her mouth to scream. Deku gasped, but he flinched as though he had been struck, and his heart ached sharply. Deku wondered why they both felt a blow, and All Might flinched, looking hurt, on the battlefield. After that, they all watched as Deku abruptly passed out, his eyes going black. With silver eyes, Kuri caught him and said, I'll protect one for everyone. Her wings grew enormous, floating up and glowing, and the wind intensified into a storm. Step back, lest you be caught in the storm. Seeing what was going on, All Might looked over and immediately diverted All's attention to one. What's going on? Todoroki sobbed as he attempted in vain to halt the storm with his quirk. Reiko took his hand and said, "Don't." Her voice was strained as she shook and tried to conceal them with her quirk. "Awaken," Kuri said, bending closer to Deku's face. "Listen to my voice." Deku woke up and began to glow. Kuri, is that you?" "Izuku Midoriya, bearer of one for all," Kuri said, looking down at him with silver eyes. "I hope you value our relationship more than your predecessor did. Recognize that we can only stop all for one by working together." With wide eyes, Deku could only nod. "I love you," Kuri whispered as she stroked his cheek and fell to the ground, cradling him in her arms as her wings gave out. OMG! Bakugo let out a scream and plummeted from the sky. "Katsu!" Reiko quickly grabbed him out of the air with her vines. "Thank Inari." Blinking, Kuri asked, "What happened?" Kuri was off balance and falls back into Deku's arms. "What? My wings. They're enormous, Zoo." Bakugo grinned and said, "You look like a hawk's bird brain." Deku replied, "Why yeah, they're amazing." Excited by the praise, Kuri flapped her wings and scattered feathers all over the place. Kuri was unaware that they were hiding or that Grams was dead. "We must leave this place. Now isn't the right time," Reiko said, tugging on Bakugo. Kuri glanced back and swiftly seized Deku for balance. "Zoo, is that Grams, is she?" "Don't look," Deku said as he drew her into his arms and buried her face in his chest. "Let's leave this place." Kuri covered herself with her wings and buried her head in his chest, saying, "Zoo." Reiko was seized by Bakugo, who said, "I'm getting you out of here." As they watched All Might's last battle on the Jumbotron, they all dispersed into the crowd. As Kuri attempted to rush to All Might's aid, Deku had to repeatedly use One for All to tighten his grip on her. Every time he was struck, Kuri flinched and sobbed in Deku's arms. He could do nothing but hold her and console her. He could not stop her pain. Knowing what All Might meant when he spoke to the crowd, Deku held her close and let himself cry with her as the battle came to an end. He wanted to use his own hands to save Kuri and the world. Bakugo was speed walking ahead of Reiko on their way back, and because he didn't want to look at her, he didn't see her coming until she was on top of him, stopping him with her hands and forcing him to turn around. "It wasn't your fault, Katsu." "Shut up," he said, growling at her and pulling away. "You're completely ignorant." Reiko wrapped her entire body around him to stop him. "No, I was present. I am aware that it was not your fault. Stop talking so much. I was to blame. I was feeble. You are not, and have never been, weak, Katsuki Bakugo," Reiko said as he tensed up and raised his chin to meet her gaze. Bakugo shook his head and tore himself from her arms, saying, "Don't you understand? This wouldn't have occurred if I hadn't been caught. It wouldn't be all." Unable to look at her any longer, he tore off at that moment. However, he misjudged the person he was interacting with. His escape was cut short when Reiko materialized in front of him. "Why won't you just go away from me? Why the hell are you still here, still trying to be with me, when I killed All Might?" He growled at her. In a very low voice, Reiko glared at him and said, "So are you saying that I killed my grandmother?" "What the devil do you mean by that?" Bakugo tensed. Reiko muttered, "She threw herself in front of All for One to protect us, to protect her granddaughters. That means I'm to blame." "That is untrue. Quit talking. You're just wrong. That can't possibly be your F." Reiko gave him a sly smile. Bakugo sheepishly replied, Yeah, I get it. You are not to blame. It was never and will never be. Kachan, you're incredible." Reiko grinned even more. With a smile, Bakugo said, "It's cute when you say it." Abruptly, Reiko embraced him. "What's wrong with you?" Bakugo let out a startled cry. "I'm never letting you go again." Squeezing her, Bakugo smiled and said, "I know." Kuri and Deku were unable to return to the dorms because All Might had called them to his office. They sat down, Deku, who was more than a little bewildered, holding her hand. "Young Midoriya," All Might greeted him as usual. "And, young Hikawa, I have a lot to explain to you, don't I? Why did Grams die for you?" Kuri scowled up at him. "Why does it feel like we are connected somehow?" Deku asked, keeping an arm around her just in case. "Long ago, your ancestor young Hikawa, was All for One's lover," All Might said with a sigh. Kuri snarled and got to his feet right away. "Take it back." All Might blurted out, Allow me to finish." Kuri. Deku touched her shoulder and said, "Please let him explain." All Might went on. When All for One asked her to use her powers to destroy the quirks of his enemies, she betrayed him, falling instead for One for All. He created a bond to punish them. His suffering became hers, and she became her master. This is the reason why I sensed your pain. That's why I wanted to save you, Curry cried. What? But he didn't really control her, did he? Deku sobbed. I would never act in that way. All Might reassured them, of course not. All for One thought he would, but it pulled them in closer instead. She wed Watanabe after One for All passed away. A man with the quirk of inheritance. Indeed, none for any was passed down. And here we are. None for any. What is it? Curry inquired. Curry, that's your peculiarity. Deku cried out and started whispering to himself. Curry cut him off, saying, no. My quirk is clairsentience. I don't believe it is. Deku remarked. All Might clarified, your quirk is inheritance, which enables you to have your own quirk and yet access the quirks of your bloodline. The quirk that can seal or destroy any other quirk is none for anyone. Oh, indeed. That's why Grams works at Tartarus, Curry said disgustedly. You're saying that I can now. Sensing her discomfort, Deku tightened his grip on her hand. Kaori and I had a disagreement long ago, All Might sighed. After her husband was killed by All for One, she developed a bitter streak. After traveling to Tartarus, she started destroying quirks. I couldn't stand that kind of thing. I had no quirks from birth. It was unforgivable to subject even villains to such a fate. Thus, we severed our connection. I'm sorry I made your family endure her anger. I ought to have kept you safe. Deku saved me. Curry yelled at him. I don't need anyone else to save me. And it was Grams who was in error. I'm glad I got to meet Curry and save her, Deku said, shaking his head. And I'll keep doing it. And keep her safe. Curry was looking at All Might. You have always known this day would come, and I apologize that it has come sooner rather than later. Why yeah. Curry walked out of the room. Deku chased after her, saying, Curry. Hold on. Curry paused. What? I'm sorry. For, Deku lingered. With tears streaming down her face, Curry turned and said, Hang's head, what am I supposed to feel? Yes, she is dead. However, she treated me horribly. Is it incorrect to say that I'm relieved? Joyful? No. It's not wrong, Deku said, giving her a strong embrace. You are free to express your emotions. Into his chest, Curry sobbed, what am I supposed to do? I'm not capable of doing what she did. Both All Might and You are beyond my protection. Quote. Deku firmly stated, and we will protect each other. It's not your job to protect All Might. She is not you. You are limited to what you are capable of doing. It's my job. Grams kept him safe. I was meant to do something if I had done something. Deku. I felt it. It hurt. I am not a hero. I'm not a guardian at all. I have done absolutely nothing for you. Curry yelled. But you have, you've been there for me, and he only had a tiny bit of One for All left, so no, you didn't need to do anything. If you had I think All for One would have won, because I would have followed you, Deku murmured. Curry tensed, the image in her mind saying, no. She cried out, no Deku. No, no, no. Simply put, no. Don't you just say no. You're too valuable, too significant, she trembled, just no. You are equally significant. Particularly to me. Curry abruptly planted a kiss on him before stopping, startled by her own actions. Deku grinned broadly and said, I got a kiss. Curry's wings enveloped her as she flushed. Avoid hiding. Deku sobbed. Curry took a quick look. You're there. Deku smiled. No. Curry went back to hiding. Please. Deku touched her wings. NNH. Curry's wings spread in surprise. Izuku. Deku's eyes grew wide. It was impolite of me. I apologize, duh. Covering her mouth, Deku said, don't, you can say Izuku. But it clearly bothered you, duh. Izuku. Deku scowled. Curry sighed. I can't call you that cuz it's just so intimate, we aren't. You certainly can. From now on, Kurisuda, you can call me Izuku. Curry turned away and said, no. We're not. Please, say my name, Deku said, turning her around and meeting her eyes. If you don't mind, I'd like to be. That's not the question, Curry pouted. I'm waiting. What query? Deku inquired naively. Curry stood up and danced, saying, come on Izuku. As she said his name, Deku grinned and said, be my girlfriend. Curry performed a backflip in midair. Work study is today. I will be a huge success at Graham's agency. Are you heading there? Incredulously, Deku asked. Hagoromo is its name. Curry smiled with pride. You're heading to Night Eye's agency, aren't you? How is All Might doing these days? He's all right, thank you. Deku grinned, relieved that after everything that had transpired, she still cared about All Might. So Zoo? Curry asked, covering her face as she went back to her breakfast. When will you ask me out? Red in the face, Deku stammered, would you like to go out? You're really not upset about the whole Todoroki thing? Curry blushed. With a slight sigh, Deku said, I'm upset about it but I forgive you. Curry looked up at him and said, if we go out, can I kiss you whenever I want? Deku smiled. Yes, she was so adorable, whenever you'd like. I want to go out after that. I want to give you constant kisses. Curry was hovering and buzzing wildly. Deku grabbed her and gave her a kiss. Curry returned the kiss, soaring with him to the ceiling. Deku chuckled. Sorry. Curry sheepishly landed them. See, could I? Curry shifted uneasily, feeling ashamed of her subsequent request. What could you do? Deku pushed. See, can I? Curry exclaimed, her wings flapping with delight. Fly you to work. Curry idly caressed his freckles. Are you certain? With wide eyes, Deku asked. Please. Curry extended her arms. All right. With excitement, Deku drew her in close to him. Curry leapt into the air. With a slight pout, Deku said, I should be the one flying you. Curry chuckled and said, Deku, you can't fly. Deku said gravely, not yet. How did he know? Curry blinked. Oh, don't worry. Curry muttered, you will, before landing. Whoa, does Night Eye work here? But this is where, Curry said, perplexed as she glanced at her phone. Are you employed here as well? Hagoromo was overrun by Night Eye. Reading from her phone, Curry exclaimed, this is incredible. Under Mana's direction, I was extremely concerned about Graham's agency. Isn't this amazing, Zoo? That implies that we will be able to collaborate. Hooray! Curry jumped up and down. With a smile, Deku went inside. I suppose it's time to begin patrolling now. I get to work with you, Lemillion. Curry exclaimed with excitement. Deku has talked about you a lot. Lemillion puffed out his chest and said, I hope everything goes well. Yes, all good things. Curry grinned, can you really phase? I can, indeed. He smiled, Lemillion. Whoa, can I see? Curry bounced. He didn't want her to see Lemillion nude, so Deku freaked out. No, he doesn't have to demonstrate that. Curry complained, but I wanna. Lemillion chuckled, knowing that his suit would keep them from being nude, but he remained silent because the two of them were so adorable. Curry. Deku complained back at her. Lemillion, hurry up, show me, Curry cried. With a smile, Lemillion showed her. Oh my goodness, Curry smiled. No new, Deku said, staring. Lemillion cut in, nope. What, not at all. The two sang together. Nice. Come on, let's patrol. I get to be Miko. Curry said, grabbing Deku's hand. She was adorable, and Deku grinned. Yes, you do. Gazing at them, Lemillion asked, are you two together? They hadn't told anyone yet, so Curry jumped in shock. We? She asked, looking to Deku for assistance. Yes, we are. Deku immediately affirmed. We are. Curry said, her eyes widening. Curry joyfully bounced. Knowing it, Lemillion laughed and said, that's so adorable. For a brief moment, everything was fine and wonderful as Curry giggled, but then she stiffened and her eyes flashed silver. Deku understood what that meant and stopped with her, holding her hand. Blood to blood, she muttered, calling me. Curry began to move away. The pain of my blood calls me forward, she said. Curry. Deku chased after her and seized her. In the same unsettling voice, Curry uttered, release me, bearer of one for all. My blood summons me hither. They were caught by Lemillion, who exclaimed, what's wrong with her? Is that her peculiarity? Deku remarked, no, this is something different. We have to follow her. Curry kept going until she came to the alley, at which point she embraced the fleeing Kiana. She was called by her younger sister. Curry attempted to console Kia while she sobbed in his arms. It's all right. Everything is all right. A man came over and called out to Kiana. The villain they were hunting down was Overhaul. Oh, Kia, that's where you went. Come on back now. Protectively, Deku ran up behind her. Curry finally woke up and blinked. What the? She exclaimed as she looked down at Kiana and recognized her right away. Her quirk then came into play, and she gave way to the young girl in pain. The girl was now experiencing the agony of her agony. She looked agonizedly at Deku. Overhaul smiled indulgently at Kiana. It's time to come home now, Kiana. Let the nice hero go. Deku bent down beside them. Knowing that he was the source of this suffering, he glared at Overhaul and said, "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to." Trembling with her sister, Curry whimpered. Curry stroked her, saying, "It's okay. It's all right. If you want to save your girlfriend, we have to let this one go. Can't you see that?" Lemillion whispered, placing a hand on Deku's shoulder before speaking aloud. "All right then, it's time for us to go." Curry was gently pulled away by Deku. He mumbled, "Curry, please let her go." Kiana touched her sister's cheek and withdrew, saying, "Oni-chan." Kiana walked to Overhaul and said, I'm sorry, Oni-chan." "Aimo Udo-chan." Curry sagged and passed out in Deku's arms. Deku looked at Kiana in agony as he picked her up and held her close. Lemillion seized Deku and brought him back to reality, saying, "Deku, we need to take her to a hospital immediately. She may have had a seizure." Deku looked concerned as he nodded and hurried her to the hospital. In the hospital, Curry awoke. "Sister, Kiana, where is she? I want to know where my sister is." She was restrained by the nurses who rushed in. Deku watched in the waiting room, his face pained. "You know more about her than I do," Lemillion said, looking at him empathetically. "What took place?" "Being close to her sister must have drawn her there," Deku uttered in a painful, vacant voice. "They have a special kind of bond." Lemillion urged, "You should talk to her. Try to calm her down. I take it she loves you." Empowered, Deku nodded and went into her room, saying, "Curry." He touched her hand and said, "Hey, you need to relax. It will be all right, I swear." "Deku, why did you take her away?" Curry growled, struggling ferociously with her restraints. "I despise you. I'll murder you. Bring my sister to me." "Get back, Midoriya," exclaimed Mana as the door slammed open. "Order not for any to let her go and make yourself useful." Deku bounced back fast. "Let her go. That's sufficient." Curry sagged, letting her body unwind. "It's best to let her rest," Mana said with a sigh of relief. "You can tell her later, and I'll explain. I was sent by Night Eye." "You were sent by him?" Surprised, Deku uttered those words. "Yes," Mana repeated. "That little girl, she was my illegitimate younger sister, Kiana Ofuda." "What?" Deku's eyes widened. "Is that the reason behind her behavior?" "That was the inheritance quirk," Mana said, nodding. "That child is screaming and in pain. She cried, and everyone in our line felt it. Reiko was not forced because it is the weakest in her. I've finished my training, personally. I was therefore not forced. However, Curry was driven, possessed. She is no longer Curry." Mana playfully tousled his hair and said, "Baka, you ought to have used one for all sooner." "Next time, I will," Deku said sheepishly. "I was terrified and anxious for her. She will be all right. She will soon awaken. I never came, because she was a projection." Mana disappeared. "Mana," Curry gestured, but she had vanished. Deku blinked. "Are you all right, Curry?" "She always does that," Curry said, pouting and nodding. "When she's actually there, I never know." "How was that accomplished?" Deku inquired. "The projection of the stars. In reality, she's at home. She sent you a message. It's a peculiarity of her telekinesis. However, she is unable to use her astral quirk. But she won't die if you kill an astral," Curry clarified. "Whoa, that's helpful," Deku began whispering to himself. "You're okay," Curry said with a smile and giggle. "You're doing fine. I was really anxious. I was awake throughout all of that. I could hear and see, but I was being controlled by my quirk." "Yeah, I'm okay." Deku gave her a hug. "I was so worried. You're all right too. We'll get her back, I swear." "Izuku," Curry screamed her anguish into his chest as she collapsed into his arms. "I felt it. She was in excruciating pain. Izuku, it sings in my blood." "Ah. It'll be okay," Deku said, giving her a tight hug and rubbing her back. "I'm very sorry. I have a question for you. Through our bond, I'm asking you to be my master," Curry said solemnly. Deku gave her a questioning glance and said, "What is it?" "Tell me to feel you instead of my blood. This discomfort." "What?" Deku inquired, surprised. I want you to. Use our bond, blushed Curry. Tell me to feel you rather than Kiana. So I can fight. I need to phrase it precisely, okay. Deku said, reflecting. Curry waited patiently for his order, nodding. She received the order from Deku. Curry gave him a hug and, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "Thank you." Deku gave her a hug. He had to save her sister, but he couldn't allow her to participate in the rescue after witnessing what this did to her. He had to do this on his own for her. Curry trembled as she stood in front of the warehouse. Deku took hold of her shoulder and said, "Hey, we'll get her, it will be all right." Curry was trembling in anger, but he was unaware of it. "I'm gonna kill him, but first he's gonna suffer. If you're going to be like that," Deku said, spinning at her harsh remarks. "Avoid entering." Curry exclaimed, "What, is that an order, one for all?" She growled at him. She remarked in jest. "Yes, sit this one out," Deku shot back with a glare. "You're overly invested in your feelings. You have no right to. You're just like All Might. I'll be waiting when you fuck this up," Curry said, storming off. "I guess you're happy about that." Deku murmured, "I'm not happy that you have to sit out, I'm nothing like All Might." "She's my sister Deku," Curry sighed. "I would behave in the same manner if it were you. I would still advise you to remain outside. You won't concentrate on the rescue, even though I know she's your sister. You'll only think about getting even. We also need him to be alive. I'll bring her to you, I swear." Curry looked up at him and took hold of his hands, saying, "Izuku. Please. I swear I'll exercise caution. I'm also concerned about you." "All right, go." Determined, Deku dashed inside and said, "I'll bring her back to you." Overhaul was fought by Deku and Kia, who, regrettably, Deku didn't anticipate. Throwing herself at Overhaul, Curry yelled, "You monster. Don't." "Curry," with the strength of one for all infused into his voice, Deku exclaimed. Curry stopped and growled, "Excellent. One for all." Curry spat the words at him before getting up and sitting down to meditate while absorbing all of Kia's suffering. Unaware of the impending attack, Deku went back into the battle. Heisaikai. Feather binding. Curry landed on his back after binding him with her feathers. Overhaul made an attempt to combat her. "Curry." Deku sobbed, but she was too loud for him. Using her quirk, Curry slapped his head and said, "You sick fuck, feel it. At your hands, experience what my sister did. You self-righteous jerk. Until your heart stops, feel it." There were terrible screams in the air. "Curry, halt." Deku seized her and said, "Enough." However, his words remained ineffective. "Hold on." From behind him, Kia sobbed, "Don't touch her. He will die from your rage. Allow me to assist you. Allow me to assist. She's my big sister, Deku." Calming down, Deku inhaled deeply before saying, "Thank you, Kia. I'm going to put you in her head by binding you together. When you arrive, let me know." Deku nodded and inhaled deeply once more. "All right, it will work." They were bound together by Kia. Deku felt her once more, their bond restored and possibly even stronger. "Whoa, why yeah, I'm good. Avoid her, Curry, quit, right now." She stopped her attack when Curry finally heard him. "I'm so sorry Zu, I didn't finish him off," Curry exclaimed. "Deku, don't think bad of sister. When she strips a quirk she has to soak up all of the horrible things he's done," Kia said, pulling at him. "She has the ability to destroy the quirk because of his sins. It wasn't my sister, rather, it was Overhaul at his worst. She was overtaken by his feelings and his hatred. She needs you to help her remember who she is." "I'll make sure she is reminded," Deku said, drawing her near. "I have no negative opinion of her. I simply was afraid for her. Are you going to be my older brother?" Kia gave him a hopeful glance. Deku blushed and said, "Why yeah I am. Well, okay, but I'm going to blow you up if you continue to hurt sis." Deku was terribly reminded of Bakugo by her blonde hair and remark. "Don't do that. Don't sound like Kachan." Deku moaned. Kia kissed his cheek and giggled, saying, "You're funny. Thank you for everything, big brother. Get married to your sister as soon as possible. Reiko, come on." Bakugo halted and beckoned to her. They went over to the testing area. "Yeah." Reiko rushed up. "Let's let this go." Bakugo paused once more. "Oh, I see Hot is also on the way." Todoroki arrived just in time, saying, "Good morning, Bakugo, Reiko." "Hey Shoto," Reiko says with a smile. "It appears to be the three of us." Bakugo complained to himself, desiring to be left alone with Reiko. Reiko, how are you feeling? How is Kuri? Todoroki inquired softly. She is doing well, thank you, I'm doing better. Reiko took Bakugo's hand. Bakugo grinned a little and gave her a smug squeeze. Let's move forward, Reiko remarked, we don't want to be late. Bakugo complained, irritated, I guess. Cat, he was prodded by Reiko. Yes, Bakugo became softer. Please, be good. Reiko spoke quietly. Bakugo said, yeah whatever. Are you jealous? Reiko whispered, blinking. Bakugo looked away with a grunt. Yes, you are. Reiko laughed. Ignoring her, Bakugo began to stretch. Reiko laughed again, and began to stretch as well. Bakugo paused, gazing. Reiko looked over, grinning. Bakugo returned the smile. Todoroki, meanwhile, frowned as he looked up and saw his father. He came to watch, huh? Reiko said, all right, it's time to prove we're capable. You dirty maggots need to shape up, said Gang Orca as he entered. Reiko let out a moan. What's that puke sack groan? Hey, you enormous fish, start over. Bakugo stood up for her. Are you a tough mongrel puppy? He was thrown by Gang Orca. Reiko stood up straight, trying not to giggle. Picking Bakugo up, Gang Orca gave him a grateful pat on the back. Showed real caliber sticking up for the fluff bucket fox here. We'll see how far it takes you if you take the test. I am not a weakling. Reiko objected. She was thrown by Gang Orca. Reiko flipped and landed upright. Gang Orca refrained from grinning. Bakugo smiled. Gang Orca quickly recovered. Excellent. We'll see how you manage. Children poured into the arena. Munchkins. Oh no. Bakugo let out a moan. Todoroki reprimanded Bakugo, saying, do not curse in front of children. Reiko slapped him on the head and said, bad cat. Hey, I'm not a babysitter for a bunch of rugrats. Todoroki firmly stated, if we wish to get our licenses you will have to be Bakugo. Reiko activated her quirk with swirling lights and tricks and said, exactly. The children were enthralled and followed the lights around. How are both of you? Reiko inquired, maintaining the delusions. We just need to show them who's boss, Bakugo complained to the children. He set off airborne explosions. Reiko laughed. What, do you have any better suggestions? Just then, one of the children took Reiko's Hoshi and fled. Hey, Reiko chased after them, saying, and not cool. Return that, you tiny nugget. Come here. Bakugo bolted. No way. The little monster smiled. Oh no. Bakugo pursued. Todoroki extended his hand to retrieve the Hoshi. Bakugo gasped and gave Todoroki a fierce look. Are you all right? Todoroki held it out while glancing at her. When Bakugo couldn't bring himself to thank Todoroki, he moaned, thank goodness. Bakugo's cheek was kissed by Reiko, who said, thank you for helping me get it. Offer her an apology. Bakugo made a demand of the child. The child complained and said he was sorry. Bakugo knelt down and said, that's right. Don't make girls cry. However, why not? The child inquired. Because, you understand that heroes don't make girls cry. You want to grow up well, don't you? Then don't make anyone cry, including girls, Bakugo remarked. After giving it some thought, the child nodded and turned to face Reiko. Okay, I'm really sorry. Bakugo took Reiko's hand and said, as for the rest of ya. Come on, let's have fun with them. Huh, Reiko reddened. Yes, if we show them who's boss and make them smile, they will respect how amazing we are. All right, Reiko smiled. Come on, let's do this. Todoroki exclaimed with excitement. Bakugo turned on his quirk. The others followed suit. The children enjoyed themselves. They all received their licenses at the conclusion of the test. Bakugo remarked, well, that was fun. Yes, it was. Reiko smiled. Are you prepared to return home? Bakugo grasped her hand. Yes. Bakugo glared at Todoroki once more. You're the only one for me, Katsuki, Reiko said, grabbing his face and giving him a passionate kiss. Kuri had already hurled an IV stand at Deku twice while he sat in the waiting room. He tapped his head and winced. Kuri was being held for her seizures, but he had already recovered. Why did he think he had lost this battle when Deku and Kuri had saved Kiana? Deku felt her pain and anguish when he touched his chest, but the urge to kill was still there. Given that killing was how she expressed her love for him, how could he tell her that he didn't want her to do it? He ordered her to leave Overhaul because he didn't want blood on her hands, that wasn't what he was fighting for. He became a hero in order to defend her, which included shielding her from the darkness within her heart. At this pace, All for One would undoubtedly drag Curry away and entice her into the shadows, so Deku lowered his head into his hands. How could he tell her to stop killing in order to protect him when his hands were tied? Kiana, there was a tiny hand on his head. Aizawa was also present. Sissy, I saw you. In a cheerful, upbeat voice, Kia said, she's really upset with you, Zu. In a conspiratorial whisper, she said, but I think that just shows how much she loves you. Deku moaned, I knew. That's what makes this so hard. Kia sat next to him, and they were quiet for a while. How would you respond if someone injured Sissy? Kia said gravely. I know. That's exactly what I would do. With a smile, Kiana says, so be each other's brakes. Kiana acted as though she was operating a vehicle. Beep beep, Zu, take a break. She always stops me when I wreck myself, Deku said, nodding slowly. When she destroys other people, I can stop her. Deku rushed into Curry's room after kissing Kia on the head. Curry didn't have anything to give. She had no desire to ever see Deku. She threw the IV at him as he walked in. Total cowling, he put the IV back where it belonged, grabbed Deku's arm, and checked the flow. Deku was able to dodge with ease. Stop yelling and talk to me, he said, getting down in her face. I am aware of your anger. I would be as well. That silenced her. Suddenly, he was paying attention to her. Curry heard Kia's voice in the corridor. Kia magic. That clarified it. Curry firmly stated, he deserved to die. I was protecting what is dear to me. Or torture them. Deku shot back, heroes don't kill people. I'm not a hero. I don't care about citizens, yelled Curry. You are important to me. You are a hero because of that, Deku said, quoting Stain. Do you know why he said that? Curry yelled. No. Deku placed his hands on hers and said, because. You love me. You love Kia. You're fighting for us. You need to make this world safe and good for us to live in. If you protect this world, you are protecting us. All the citizens that you hate so much, I love them. Protect them for me, Curry. But Deku gave her nose a tap. Not finished. Curry frowned. I know you aren't a killer, Curry. I want you to be gentle with the villains. I want you to choose life and good. Do it for me. Curry sighed as she gave him a look. I never wanted to be a hero. But you do, and for some reason you see a hero in me. So alright, I'll ease up. She grasped his arms. If you promise to protect your body. Deku gave a shrug. I knew you'd ask for that. And for some reason you love this body, so, I'll protect it, for you. They clasped hands. Let's do it together. After some time, the moment had come for the decisive action against the Liberation Front. Since Curry was the only person known to be able to purify Nomu, she was assigned the task of infiltrating with Mirko. However, she hoped to locate her brother Hawks by sneaking out. Curry and Mirko sneaked into the lab. It's too quiet. I don't like it. Mirko impatiently said, keep on your toes then. Come on, let's go. Curry started to go inside, but she stopped and gasped. Death. Her eyes went blank and she passed out, her proxy rising to join her sister. Her brother and sister were joined upstairs by a semi-solid projection that flew up. Curry's body was caught by Miko. Damn it, sis, Reiko exclaimed, startled. Oh hi, how did I? Hawks recoiled visibly. Sister. From around the corner, he had caught a glimpse of her flying in. Curry went into hiding. He was not meant to see them just yet. He saw me. You just appeared. Aren't you supposed to be with Mirko? I was. I think I still am. Hawks went back to fighting, and he attacked the villain because he thought Twice was making fun of him by showing him pictures of his sister. Alarmed, Curry chased after him. Wait, Hawks. Dabi, however, ambushed them and struck them with his fire. Ha no you don't. No. Curry rolled and pitched, suffering fire damage. Reiko screamed, shit, we gotta get out of here. As she attempted to console. Hawks, meanwhile, was attacking Twice in an attempt to shield his family from whatever Twice might have known about them. Panting, he hit Twice down. Brother no, cried Curry. Ah, how cute a family reunion. Now allow me to cut it short. Dabi yelled at Hawks. No, Curry yelled as he attempted to spread his wings. Brother speak to me, she exclaimed, tears streaming down her face. Stay back, Hawks attempted to engage in combat. Hawks were burned by Dabi. I'm talking to the girl. Hawks let out agonized cries. Curry proclaimed, brother, and gave him to Reiko. No, Reiko hurried to his aid and attempted to cure him. I'm going to murder this idiot. Curry exclaimed. Yes, indeed, Overhaul, attack me the way you did. Show me how brutal you are. Dabi chuckled. No, that's not how heroes act. Curry shook her head. Has anyone mentioned heroes? Dabi grinned sarcastically. You're the one we ought to have abducted. You'd be a great addition to the league. I can't act like that, Curry stammered. Not as a partner of Deku. He believes in me. At last, Reiko lost it and gave him the appearance of burning by using her foxfire. How dare you say that to her? Thinking he had set himself on fire, Dabi screamed. Curry scowled and threw them out, saying, like I'm taking advice from you, vindictive child, Toya Todoroki. Curry took off for the other's location. Deku, sis, everyone, emergency. Shoto noticed the decay when he looked up. It's coming. What's going on? Exclaimed Deku. Curry raised her hands and said, Shigaraki is awake. I'll hold it off. Run. Kek Kai. As her feathers grew, they surrounded the city, forming a barrier and halting the deterioration. Shoto inquired, how long will that last? Curry used her feathers to make spirit double, saying, I have to stay here and keep it up. If my will is broken, so goes the barrier. Deku said, please be careful, Curry. Curry's clone approached and held out both arms to the two of them, saying, I'll carry both you and sis. Shoto followed and offered protection. Everyone, get the people to take cover while I protect myself. However, Curry, Deku glanced at the actual one. Curry snatched Deku and took off, saying, he's chasing you. I'm sorry, Izuku, Curry said, holding him close. I'm going to move sis to his location and you and I are going to lead him away. I will have to risk your safety. However, I don't give a damn about that. You're the one, exclaimed Deku. No, Zu, it's you. You've always been the one. Would you please try to look after yourself? Curry remarked. And you need to take care of yourself too. Deku replied. Curry gave him a firm kiss and said, I adore you. Curry landed, let's win. Sis, Curry said, grabbing her sister. We must transport you to the battle. You can do more than I can. You were able to cure them. Reiko sighed, I know sis. There's Aizawa, Curry said, putting Reiko in hiding. He urgently needs assistance. What are you kids doing here? Aizawa whispered, I'm fine. I'm going, sis. I must assist those Nomu. The clone of Curry took off. With a sigh, Deku left to engage in combat. To bind Shigaraki, another Curry flew up behind him. Curry struggled to bind Shigaraki while Deku kept fighting. All, for, one. Curry moaned, then stopped, her eyes going blank. As Gigantomachia broke through her barrier and killed a portion of her, she was overcome with pain. Oh, Izuku. Curry dropped from the sky as her eyes went blank and she met Deku's gaze. Curry. Deku lost control and launched an assault. Aizawa moaned, what the hell? Shoto showed up. How are you, Reiko? Halfway through healing Aizawa, Reiko wiped her brow and said, I'm good. I'm gonna give you cover. Shoto replied, I want you to take the infirm and run. Looking up at him, Reiko gasped, what? I'm unable to do that. As Deku raged, Gigantomachia landed and tore Shigaraki from the battlefield. Bakugo came roaring in. Oi dumb Deku, quit, stop, he said, grabbing Deku. The bird bitch is still alive. I want you out of here, Shoto went on. No argument. The league has arrived. How are you certain she isn't? Deku snarled, pulling at Bakugo, trying to free himself and punish Shigaraki. I saw her. Tenchi is dead. Dabi laughed and said, don't listen. We were the ones who killed her. It's true. Wow, Shoto was able to get married. Shoto turned and looked inquiringly at Dabi. Endeavor moved protectively in front of them. Bakugo held Deku as he sagged in grief. Do you require another lesson from me? Reiko snarled at Dabi. Then Endeavor growled, Dabi. Why don't you address me by name? Dabi grinned and washed the dye from his hair, saying, Toya. Astonishment and wonder. He turned to Shoto following Dabi's dance and his attack on his family. That you selected a Hikawa for your bride Shoto is not surprising. For a while, wasn't the other one your woman? She's a bit of a villain, so I don't blame you, Dabi said with a smile. Deku punched him in the face after hearing this. Whoa, not very nice, Dabi laughed as he dodged. Then, I assume she's yours. Well done. He blew Deku back with his fire and said, you know, there was another Hikawa when we were kids. All Might wouldn't take her after all. Hikawa Keigo Takami. When Kaori banished him and erased his memory, he lost his name. Wouldn't you say that it's nearly worse than what I received? What was wrong with Hawks, girl? Tell me, was it because she was aware of his monstrous nature? In order to keep him in place for Reiko's trick, Kuri threw herself at him. Reiko attacks him once more with her previous Foxfire illusion. You fucking bastard. Dabi screamed, her delusion taking over again. Did you murder him? As Dabi was consumed by her Foxfire, Shoto inquired. No, that's not fire, Endeavor replied. It's a delusion. Regretfully, the villains managed to flee through the flames. Reiko glanced at Endeavor and grinned slightly, saying, good catch. Endeavor's head cocked. Deku fainted, but Kuri ran and grabbed him. Thinking she was dead and had come to bid her farewell, Deku touched her face and said, I'm sorry. She was unaware that he believed her dead. Kuri kissed his forehead and said, no need, just rest. You fought well. Deku was sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sorry, Kuri. Kuri gave him a kiss. As she put him to sleep, she said, I love you so much. There is nothing to be sorry for. Downy feathers. She intended to take him to the hospital. Her downy feathers, however, were too powerful. The endeavor failed. Shoto reached out in alarm. Shit, however, he was also out. Kuri cast a sorrowful glance at her sister. Sis, I've been distracted all this time. I have to go save them. The Nomu. I'm a Miko, it's my job. Kuri embraced her. Attend to Zu. Express my love for him to him. You can't just walk away from him like that, sis. Reiko was worried about everyone. What did you do? I was unable to bind Shigaraki. Worse, I knew about Dabi and decided not to alert Endeavor or even Shoto. I let everyone down. She hung her head. It's all right. I also knew about him, but I kept it a secret from Shoto. I swear, sis, we'll prevail. Reiko uttered those words. I have to save the Nomu, you know. The only person who can is me. You ought to have seen Aizawa and present Mike-sensei. I owe this to Aizawa-sensei for everything he sacrificed. I know, but he'd want you to stay safe, you and Midoriya. Healing is what you do, Kuri said, giving her sister a hug. And I act in this manner. Death. After saying, I'll be back soon, Kuri took off, leaving the bodies on the battlefield to sleep. Deku raised his hand involuntarily and said, Kuri, no. Kuri returned to UA exhausted and battered. Despite her best efforts, she had failed to save a single Nomu. What good were her abilities anyhow? Rather, she had to strip and bind quirk after quirk until the emotional toll had worn her down and left her in pain. Rubbing her eyes, Kuri was in such agony that she was seeing ghostly images of a battered Deku. She was certain she had seen him in the city, but he had vanished. However, he was undoubtedly safe here in the sanctuary. Everyone was staring at her in shock after she landed in the dorm after flying. Sister, you're alive, exclaimed Reiko as she dashed over. Kuri blinked. I am, of course. But, Midoriya said. Izuku, he's where? Kuri inquired. Won't he be happy to see me again? She felt a little offended. Reiko said softly, no sis. Midoriya went out. He believed you were dead. His battle with All for One is all that remains for him. No, Kuri sobbed as she recalled the battered ghost from the streets. Had that been her Deku? She collapsed into the chair. I have to see All Might. Where? Gone. Most likely with Midoriya, seeking feathers, Kuri said as she stumbled to her feet and let go of her feathers. Locate Izuku Midoriya and give him a feather. Be discreet. Kuri, he stated that One for All had severed its connection to you. He knew you were dead because of that. A part of me did die, Kuri sighed. Silent and invisible, the connection remains. To make it right, I need him to acknowledge me again. You're going after him, Reiko said, gazing at her. All of Class 1A suddenly surrounded her and said, we're coming too. Entering the Hikawa Manor bedroom, Deku was overcome by the aroma and presence of the woman he loved. He wiped tears as he gazed at one of the pictures on the mantel, then he picked up one of Kuri's stuffed animals and held it, crying as he passed out on the bed and whimpered her name. After hearing her name, Kuri, who had come home to fetch something, ran to Deku, who was unconscious, when she opened the door. Deku, everything is going to be alright. Love, I've finally found you, she sobbed as she pulled him into her lap, being careful not to wake him. You're so badly hurt. And your heart, my god, your heart is broken, Curry whispered. And now, I am here. Suddenly, her hands started to glow by themselves. Curry. Deku awoke slowly and became motionless. Who? He jerked back when he saw her. No, 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 you're not real, you're an imposter. Izuku, what's wrong? It's me. Please, don't move, you're hurt, Curry exclaimed before realizing she was mistaken and that he had somehow recovered. In an attempt to console him, she tried to give him a hug. Deku hastily retreated. No, you're not, you can't heal, and you're dead. When Curry finally saw her glowing hands and his healed body, she exclaimed, heal. What are you talking about? Hey, you're not broken anymore, wah. Deku growled, shut up, Kansas smash. The faker halted his fist. That's something that only 2 people in the world could do. All Might was one, not for any's other bearer was. Deku staggered back in disbelief as his eyes grew wide. K. Curry, it's really, why you? Izuku. Curry seized him, coughed, and placed him on the ground. See, I'm coughing. Would all for one send someone who was sick? Who had a weakness? No, it's me. Please, stop fighting me before you get hurt. My powers. Deku struggled and exclaimed, but you can't be real. You can't heal. Curry said clumsily, yeah, my aunt said that might be coming. For the record, it is activated by true, pure, love. Please Izuku, please listen to me. If we fight I could hurt you, my feelings are advancing my powers. Curry got to her feet. She spread her jet black wings, now the size of hawks, and said, look. Deku sobbed as he tackled Curry after realizing it was her. Ah, oh Zu, I'm so sorry. Curry wept alongside him. It's my fault, all my fault. But you were dead. Curry had to clarify, I know. During the battle, to create the barrier I did the charm of multiplicity. It made 3 of me. I'm so sorry, I didn't know they would die when their time was up. I remember Zu, dying in your arms, your heartbroken face. When I got those memories I tried to find you but you were gone. I've been searching, the pain from that of the Nomu made my powers advance, and he said it's trauma. Deku gave her a firm embrace. Don't do it again. Curry smiled and held him close, saying, never. Curry, also known as Miko, raised her voice in a sing-song note, it's not just me, Zu. Evirion, over here. As usual, the Hikawa clan was the only group leading the way at first. In case they had to put him down, Reiko was using magic. Kiana, young, gazing at her hero. Sharp-tongued Mana reluctantly took a day off from managing her empire. A tall, dark-skinned woman, a young girl with blue hair and pigtails, a short-haired blonde girl in the arms of a brave brunette, and a couple more relatives he had not yet met. These must therefore be the American cousins. They were followed by the entire Class 1A in full hero uniform. When she put her arms around him once more, Deku knew he should flee, but he unavoidably broke under her hug and started crying. I thought you were dead. Curry looked at him as though this was an impossible task, which, to his surprise, it was. The question is how you got in my house, in my room. She asked. He scratched the back of his neck and said, well, when I thought you were gone, I just ended up here. And when I saw your house, something just drew me inside. His face lit up with a sheepish smile. Curry exclaimed, but that doesn't make any sense. Instead, this house has magical protection, and no offense, Deku, but you're immortal. With a note of surprise in his voice, Deku laughed. That's true, but I don't know how to explain it. As soon as I stepped into your house, I felt a strange sensation, like the very fabric of reality was bending to let me in. It's just as I thought, One for All is different. Curry touched his chest. With a realistic expression on his face, Deku nodded slowly. He took your hand and put it over his heart, where the faint glow of One for All pulsed rhythmically. You mean, One for All is responding to our bond? That's why I could get through your magical protections? He asked. No, Curry promptly denied. I mean, I don't think One for All is a quirk at all. Deku's eyes went wide with shock. He trailed off, thinking about what she had said. What do you mean? Of course, it's a quirk. It's the source of my strength, my speed. Wait, if it's not a quirk, then what is it? It might be, a magical power. His mouth fell open in shock. A magical power, like the kind you use? He asked hesitantly after he paused. Does that mean I've had magic inside me this whole time, and I never knew it? Well, that explains why it works best on quirkless people. During the magical shift, they used to be. Oh man, let me explain from the beginning. With his hand still in hers, Deku leaned in and listened intently, his eyes glowing with curiosity. Please, explain everything. I need to understand. He leaned back against the couch, prepared to hear the story she was going to tell. Remember how quirks began with a glowing baby? Deku nodded, his face contemplative. Yes, I remember. That's what started it all, the glowing babies born with the first quirks. It was a phenomenon that changed the world. That was my ancestor, and it wasn't a quirk. Startled by this realization, Deku blinked. He shook his head in shock, attempting to process what he had just heard. Wait, what? Your ancestor was the first one with a glowing ability, and it wasn't a quirk? He asked. But then, he was a witch, like me. The most powerful witch ever. In fact, the day he was born, all of magic on Earth stopped for the whole day. The day the magic died. Deku's expression was one of wonder and amazement as he listened in awe. So, you're saying that your ancestor was a witch, and the glowing ability was actually a form of magic. And it was so powerful that it halted all magic on Earth for an entire day. Yes, exactly. But years later, evil mustered its strength. All the monsters on Earth shared their power to create the ultimate evil. In order to stop it, my ancestor had to destroy it publicly. He became the world's first hero. Deku trailed off, his mind aflutter with ideas and insights, whispering, the world's first hero. His eyes were full of newly discovered respect as he gazed at you. With a gentle smile, he entwined his fingers with hers and said, and now, his descendant is sitting right in front of me. Curry reddened. Why yes. But that's not all. Next, the progenitor of magic, the mother of all, was brought back. You see, magic began when this woman, Nina, found the source of magic, called the All. She and her husband lived within it and had children, the first witches. But the world began to die, and so her husband was separated from her to bring balance back. So she was angry, and in her vengeance, she switched the polarity of magic. All the mortals had magic, also known as quirks, and the witches were powerless, except, miraculously, my ancestor, the hero. He saved the mortals from themselves, helped regulate quirks, and enacted an elaborate spell so no one would remember any of this. Deku listened carefully, his eyes wide with astonishment. He shook his head, attempting to comprehend the magnitude of the revelation. The mother of all, the switch in polarity, the hero's spell. And all of this was kept a secret, hidden from the world. Yes. But it all started with All for One and One for All. I think, they were the first hero's power. Together. And then he gifted them to the original bearers. I think he intended for them to continue his work, and I think All for One killed him. As he heard the story, his face darkened. So, All for One and One for All, a shared quirk with immense power, a force meant to carry on the original bearer's mission. Yes, and that's how you were able to get in the house. You were born quirkless. And that means, you're a witch. Like me. Deku felt an odd new connection to her as he gazed at his hands. Witch, he said again, attempting to comprehend the realization. And you're saying that because I'm quirkless, it means I'm one of you. Part of this hidden world. Yes, I think so. The house let you in. I think One for All is really magic. And it settles best in quirkless people because they have a witch bloodline. Deku's eyes went wide with surprise. So, One for All isn't just a powerful quirk, but magic. And somehow, a piece of it was passed down to me through my witch bloodline. Is that what you're suggesting? I think so. Taking this new information into consideration, he nodded solemnly. But then, where does Not for Any come in? What about you? I think the first bearer of None for Any was the first hero's daughter. She betrayed him and joined up with All for One, but when he killed her father, she switched sides. And then all that happened, and here we are. Curry gazed into his eyes. Deku intertwined his in her hands. We are even closer now. Curry moaned. I should have realized when you got Black Whip. Having multiple powers is common for a witch. Our powers grow into other ones as we get older, that's where I saw the connection. That's accurate, Deku remarked. With you, it started with clairsentience, then the wings, the lotus, so much has happened. Yeah, I should have known. Deku leaned closer and softened his voice as he said, So, One for All's ability to hold multiple powers is not an anomaly, but rather a trait shared by witches. Then we can work together, even closer and closer. Do you feel me now? Yes, I feel the hope welling up inside you. Deku's eyes widened a little, taken aback by how accurate your statement was. With his heart thumping in his chest, he looked at her closely and asked, how strong is it? Can you feel everything I'm feeling? Curry reddened. Why yes, I can. You missed me. A lot. You thought I was dead, and now all you wanna do is kiss me all over to prove I'm really here. Deku became acutely aware of the intensity of his feelings, and his face flushed. He inhaled deeply and took a step toward her, saying, K. Krista. I thought I had lost you. Every day without you was a struggle. Why you're right, I do want to kiss you. Curry whispered and gave him a hug. I am here. Deku buried his face in the bend of her neck and encircled her with his arms. He slowly worked his way up to her lips, planting soft, gentle kisses along her neck and collarbone, saying, you're warm, you're real. I love you, Krista. Together we will win. I won't let you lose. As Deku held Curry close and his thoughts raced with the new information about his abilities and ancestry, the moon shone brightly through the window. It was both overwhelming and illuminating to consider that he was a witch and that his strength came from something other than quirks. A gentle knock on the door, however, snapped them out of their reverie before he could go any further. Reiko's face appeared through the creaking door, her eyes widening at the sight of Deku and Curry so near to one another. She said, sorry to interrupt, as a cheeky smile appeared on her face. I just wanted to check in on you two lovebirds. Deku rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly as Curry withdrew, her face flushed. Reiko, we were just talking. Reiko teased, sure you were, as she slipped into the room. With a fleeting expression of relief, she allowed her eyes to linger on Curry for a brief moment. We've all been worried, you know. It's good to see you safe, Curry. Sensing the subtle glow that surrounded Reiko whenever her light orb powers flickered, Deku turned to face her. He had become accustomed to viewing Reiko as Bakugo's equal, loyal and fierce, but also able to soothe him in ways that no one else could. Curry extended her arm to grasp Reiko's hand. Thank you, Reiko. I'm sorry for worrying everyone. Reiko squeezed her hand and nodded before returning her focus to Deku. With a hint of vulnerability in her voice, she said, and as for you, don't go disappearing like that again. We're all in this together. I don't want to have to chase after both of you. Deku looked up at her, his resolve coming back. He put a comforting hand on Curry's shoulder and said, I won't. I know now that I'm not alone. They were startled by a knock on the door, and before anyone could react, Bakugo's voice could be heard. Oi, nerds, what's the hold up? We've got training. When the door opened, Bakugo was standing there with his arms folded and his usual frown. However, his tone became slightly less harsh as his eyes met Reiko's. Don't tell me you're slacking off here. Reiko gave him a teasing look. We're not slacking, just catching up on a few things. Bakugo sighed, but as he looked at her, his face softened. His expression changed to something unreadable as he turned to face Deku and Curry and said, fine. Just don't keep me waiting. You two better be ready. We've got a long road ahead. With a determined look in her eyes, Curry nodded. We're ready, Bakugo. Reiko fell in step with Bakugo as they headed to the training grounds, her presence relieving his usual stress. When she was around, the others noticed a slight softening of his demeanor, something Bakugo would never publicly acknowledge. After warming up rapidly, they began sparring in pairs, testing their mettle in anticipation of the upcoming conflicts. As they adjusted to each other's rhythms, Deku and Curry found themselves side by side, their skills in sync and moving fluidly. It seemed as though their bond was strengthened by their newfound understanding of One for All's magical beginnings, and they began working together almost naturally. Bakugo scowled as he observed them, but Reiko saw a hint of respect in his eyes. Smirking, she nudged him. Jealous. He crossed his arms and scoffed. As if, they've got a long way to go if they think they're gonna keep up with me. Reiko rolled her eyes, but her eyes were warm. Before concentrating on her own training, she gave him a playful shove and said, sure, Mr. Number 1. Her light orb quirk illuminated the field as she skillfully moved around Bakugo, testing his reflexes and dodging his blasts. Exhausted but resolute, the group assembled beneath the moonlit sky as the training session came to a close. Feeling the weight of their newfound connection to magic, Deku and Curry looked at each other. They silently agreed that they still had a long way to go, but they would confront it together. Bakugo and Reiko stood next to each other, gazing up at the stars while Reiko's hand touched his. She whispered, "We're going to win this," with conviction in her voice. Bakugo looked at her and grunted, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Damn right we are. Knowing that they were constrained by magic, fate, and the strength of their bonds, they all returned to the dorms with a fresh sense of purpose. They knew they could overcome any obstacle together, even though the battles ahead loomed large. Even though the night was quiet, Yue felt a subtle tension due to the weight of the day's revelations. The astounding truths Curry had just revealed continued to race through Deku's head as he sat next to her in her room. Enchantment. Bloodlines of witches. A secret past that linked them all in some way. And to think that this was only the beginning of what he needed to comprehend. A soft knock cut them off before he could ask any more questions. Reiko appeared as the door creaked open, her bright, plant green eyes and gentle smile a pleasant sight. Am I interrupting? She inquired as she entered, her presence balancing the tense energy in the room. She grinned warmly as usual, but there was a hint of knowledge in her eyes that suggested she knew what Deku and Curry were talking about. Curry gestured for her to come over while shaking her head. She gave Deku a comforting nod and said, "Not at all. I was actually hoping you'd join us. You remember the story of how we met, right?" Deku looked between them, his eyes softening. "Of course, you two were the first people I really felt I had to protect." Reiko grinned, her face displaying a hint of warmth and nostalgia. "And here you are, still keeping that promise." She touched a nearby plant as she sat down, and tiny green sprouts exploded into life when she touched it. Her plant luck quirk had always seemed more like a gift than a power. Wherever she went, flowers and vines grew, and even in the worst of circumstances, things tended to turn out well for them. With a smile tugging at her lips, Curry turned to face her sister. "Reiko, we're going to need your quirk more than ever, especially with everything going on." Reiko gave a serious nod. She looked at Deku with a serene assurance in her eyes and said, "I know. With everything that's happening, I'm just glad we're all together. We'll get through it, and we'll protect each other." When the students completed their daily drills, the sun sank low over the training grounds, leaving the forest around Yue in long shadows. Particularly following their recent conversation, Deku and Curry had been exerting a lot of effort. Their unexpected connection, her bloodline quirk, and every new detail about One for All had given them both new resolve. Deku looked toward the woods as they gathered their belongings. A strange, almost instinctual pull pulled at his senses. The slightest hint of discomfort caught Curry's attention as well. With a voice hardly audible above a whisper, Deku questioned, "Do you feel that?" Curry nodded, her gift for empathy detecting a faint, faraway pulse of guilt and fear. "There's something, or someone, out there." Without saying anything more, the two followed the tension Curry sensed as they crept stealthily into the forest. The air was heavy with something unsaid, and the forest was quiet and dense. Their footsteps were silent on the wet ground as they moved cautiously. Then, through the trees, they noticed a dim flash of light. As they got closer, they noticed Aoyama standing by himself in a tiny clearing, staring down at something in his hand with his back to them. He held a piece of cheese with a message scratched into it, and Deku and Curry froze, watching. "I know everything." The words hung menacingly, their simplicity almost derisive. Unaware of Deku and Curry's presence, Aoyama's shoulders sagged and his face was clouded by fear and guilt. Curry's heart tightened as she felt the waves of guilt and hopelessness emanating from him. "Aoyama." Deku's cautiously quiet voice broke the stillness. He moved forward, shocking Aoyama, who whirled around, his eyes flashing with fear. As he attempted to conceal the piece of cheese behind his back, Aoyama stammered, "Midoriya." "K. Curry." In a shaky voice, "What are you? Why are you here?" Curry and Deku looked at each other as the realization hit them. Aoyama's manner was completely different, a heaviness that neither of them had ever experienced. Curry stepped closer and spoke softly. "Aoyama, what's going on? You can trust us." Aoyama's face went white, and his eyes darted between them as though he were imprisoned and in dire need of a way out. His eyes began to well up with tears as he drew in a shaky breath. I never wanted to hurt any of you. I never wanted to betray anyone." The full impact of Aoyama's words weighed down on Deku's chest, causing his eyes to widen. "Betray? Aoyama, what do you mean?" With the cheese in his hand like a lifeline, Aoyama stifled a sob. "All for one," He forced me. If I didn't, he would have hurt my family. Bound by the weight of a secret that would alter everything, the three of them stood together in the peaceful woods. Outside, there was a commotion while Bakugo and Reiko conversed. Reiko's luck quirk seemed to stir as their classmates' voices reverberated down the hall. She was compelled to follow the sounds as her instinct took over. "Let's go," she said quietly and gravely. Following the voices, the three of them entered the hallway and found Bakugo waiting with his arms folded in the common area. When he saw Reiko come in, his eyes grew softer, and his frown briefly disappeared. "We need to talk," Bakugo said, giving Deku a nod. "Something's up." As their teachers walked in, their faces unusually tense, they all gathered around them. Aizawa's eyes moved between them as he spoke in a calm yet serious tone. "We've discovered something critical, something that could change everything." Aoyama came in, his face unreadable as he spoke. Everyone in the room felt uneasy as a quiet tension grew. Kuri's empathy quirk picked up on the whirlpool of emotions erupting around them, and Deku felt her hand tighten around his. "Aoyama," Aizawa went on, looking at him. "We've recently uncovered information about a traitor within UA. Someone connected to All for One." As the words registered, Deku's heart raced. Disbelief and bewilderment fought in his mind as he looked at Aoyama. As the shock spread throughout the room, his classmates exchanged shocked and betrayed looks. Aoyama's flamboyant manner vanished, and his face turned pale. He was hardly able to look at any of them as he muttered, I never wanted this." He spoke in a tremulous voice. "I only did it because, if I didn't, my family." With each word, the tension increased and the room fell silent. Reiko sensed her quirk stirring once more, a sensation akin to the delicate balance of luck teetering on the verge of disaster. Sensing the pain and terror emanating from Aoyama, Kuri's empathy grew. Her voice was steady but gentle as she moved forward. She put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Aoyama, you're one of us. You've always been one of us. Whatever you've done, you're here now. And we won't abandon you." Aoyama's eyes were filled with relief and surprise as he gazed at her. He started to reply, but his shoulders were heavy with guilt. When he finally revealed his secret, he found it difficult to contain his tears. Deku, Reiko, and Bakugo glanced at each other and silently decided that they would deal with whatever came next together. The corridors of the UA hummed with a solemn vitality. The atmosphere had changed following Aoyama's admission, becoming burdensome with the plans they had hoped they would never have to make. The conflict seemed closer than before. There was little time for uncertainty or hesitancy because the teachers were working around the clock and the students had been briefed on their roles. However, those emotions persisted beneath the surface for some people. Standing by himself, Deku looked out from a tall balcony over the training fields. His thoughts were racing about Shigaraki and the future. Even the part of him that was still Tenko Shimura clung to the hope of saving Shigaraki. However, there were hints of doubt in another section that was more realistic and ominous. Sensing his internal struggle, Kuri came up behind him and tightened his hold on the railing. She put a hand on his shoulder and took a step closer. "Deku," she whispered, her voice a comforting salve to his troubled mind. "Are you all right?" Deku let out a breath and lowered his shoulders a little. He struggled to find the right words as he trailed off. "I don't know, Kuri. Everyone expects me to be the one to face Shigaraki. But, if it comes to it, if there's no other way." Knowing the turmoil inside him, Kuri's heart ached. The turbulent mixture of fear, grief, and resolve in him was picked up by her empathy quirk. With a whisper, "You don't have to carry this burden alone," she reached for his hand. "I'm here with you." His gaze lowered to the spot where their fingers entwined. He was troubled by the memory of her own peculiarity, not for any. He was concerned about her power, how it could totally destroy quirks, and what would happen if she ever encountered All for One or Shigaraki. He didn't want to cause her any more pain because he had already witnessed the toll it took on her. He muttered, "Kuri, promise me you'll be careful." "Not for any. It's powerful, and I know it could help, but it's dangerous." Kuri gave a serious nod. "I promise, but if it means protecting you, I won't hold back. We're in this together, Deku." As the gravity of the impending conflict dawned on them, the silence between them grew longer as they clung to one another. The atmosphere between Bakugo and Reiko was different from their typical competitive exchanges, but they were sparring in another part of UA. They shared a common understanding in every strike and dodge, and their movements were more precise and concentrated. As Reiko avoided one of Bakugo's explosions and was briefly protected by a cascade of vines, her plant quirk flared. At last, they stopped to catch their breath. Bakugo's typically fierce expression softened to one of vulnerability as he gazed at her. He said, "Reiko," in a hushed tone that was different from her usual one. "You know I don't do goodbyes, so I'm not about to start now. But I want you to know." Grinning, Reiko put her hand on his arm and grounded him. "I know, Katsuki. You don't have to say anything." Bakugo's typical fire returned with a huff. "Damn right. Just don't get yourself killed out there." Reiko laughed, but her eyes were serious. She said, "I'll be careful if you are," and moved in closer. Even though they were both aware of the impending danger, they took solace in one another's company as they stood together. The pro-heroes and students gathered around a map in the central briefing room, whispering last-minute tactics and details. Seated close to the front, Aoyama appeared exhausted but resolute. Now that he was a part of their plan, he was determined to support his classmates in spite of the chaos caused by the recent events. All Might's voice filled the room as he spoke. "Remember, this plan hinges on our coordination and trust in each other. Aoyama's cooperation will give us the advantage we need, but we have to be ready for anything." As he was finishing, Deku experienced a sudden chill and a sense of impending doom. When he looked directly into Aoyama's eyes and saw the regret and fear there, he understood how serious the situation was. There was no room for failure. Bakugo looked at Kuri and Deku, his fists clenched, his eyes fierce. He snarled, "Let's get one thing straight, we're not here to play hero, we're here to win. And we're going to give these villains hell." Despite his lingering doubts, Deku nodded and felt a wave of resolve. "Right, we'll do whatever it takes." Kuri's expression reflected his determination as she squeezed his hand. Together, standing shoulder to shoulder, prepared for whatever came next, Reiko and Bakugo exchanged a glance and unspoken words. Monoma was preparing to carry out his crucial part in the scheme on the roof. His ability to temporarily imitate Kurogiri's warp quirk, which had been kept in a lab under Yue's supervision, had made his quirk, copy, extremely useful. Monoma would divide the villains using warp gates, sending them to battle zones where the heroes would be waiting, with the assistance of the students and pro-heroes. Standing next to him, Aizawa spoke in steady, low tones. "Monoma, focus. We're counting on you to stay connected. One slip could mean disaster." Monoma swallowed his nerves and steadied himself before nodding. He would not disappoint his classmates because he was aware of the risks. "Understood, sensei." With their sights set on Aoyama, the Bait, Deku, Kuri, and the other members of Class 1A assembled on the roof. There was resolve in Aoyama's eyes despite his pale face. No matter how terrified he was, he would face this. Reiko approached Bakugo, and the two of them developed a silent understanding as they got ready for what was about to happen. "Stay close, but don't get in my way, all right?" Bakugo muttered as he became aware of her proximity. Reiko gave him a small smile as she rolled her eyes. "I can take care of myself, Katsuki. Just try not to blow up the whole school." Bakugo clenched his fists and huffed, a slight smirk tugging at his lips as he prepared for battle. Not making any promises. As the appointed time drew near, they all held their breath. At last, a shadowy form appeared on the horizon. All for One and the League of Villains had come, lured by Aoyama's presence. Even though All for One was getting closer, Aoyama held his ground despite his shaking hands. A cold, mocking voice said, "You did well to summon us, little traitor," echoing from All for One. Aoyama looked up with renewed determination and clenched his fists. "This time, I won't betray my friends." The grin on All for One's face wavered, and Monoma suddenly acted. When he used Kurogiri's warp quirk, Monoma's hands glowed and a system of gates opened throughout the forest. Every villain was drawn into a different gate and taken to battle zones where heroes were waiting. With his copy quirk activated, Monoma channeled Kurogiri's warp gate ability with intense concentration. The mansion grounds and forest were surrounded by a system of gates, each intended to divide the villains and direct them to battle zones where the heroes were waiting. The villains were teleported to different remote places and staggered, confused by the abrupt change. As scheduled, Deku and Kuri were positioned together, prepared to advance in the direction of Shigaraki. However, before they could move forward, a familiar face with an eerily happy smile appeared out of the shadows. Then Himiko Toga showed up, staring at Deku. She whispered, "Deku," with a menacing sparkle in her eyes. "I've missed you." Deku tensed, instinctively ready to defend, but Toga sprang forward and grabbed him by the arm before he could do so. She held Deku tightly, and before he could break free, she opened the warp gate underneath them, taking them both to a new place. Kuri's heart tightened in terror as she watched Deku and Toga disappear, her eyes widening. She yelled, "Deku!" But he had already vanished into the teleportation's chaos. Kuri gritted her teeth and steadied herself, determined to locate him as quickly as possible. She was aware that every moment mattered. Deku staggered as he and Toga appeared in a deserted, eerily silent area of the city. Raising his guard as he evaluated the situation, he swiftly withdrew from her hold. However, Toga merely grinned, her eyes glimmering with a perverted fondness. "Deku," she said in a quiet but icy whisper. Her tone faltered as she said, "I want to understand you. I want to know why you smile like that, why you fight the way you do." Her customary playfulness was broken by an unnerving sincerity. Feeling the weight of her words, Deku took a steadying breath. "Toga, this isn't about understanding, you're hurting people." With a hint of melancholy in her eyes, she cocked her head. Her expression darkened as she said, "I only want to be close to the people I love." She lunged, her knives glinting, to get closer to them. Deku fought to protect himself while dodging, his movements fluid as he attempted to defuse the situation. Knowing that Kuri and his friends were fighting for their lives somewhere in this tumultuous battlefield, his thoughts briefly turned to them. However, he couldn't afford to be sidetracked at this time. Toga's smile was both unnerving and full of an unsettling earnestness, and her eyes sparkled with twisted affection. "Deku, I've missed you," she whispered, staring at him as if he were the only person in the world. Deku remained vigilant and steadied himself. "I don't want to harm you, Toga, but I also can't allow you to harm other people." With a twinge of sorrow in her eyes, she cocked her head and said, "But all I want is to be near the people I care about. Are you unable to comprehend that?" Deku tried to reason with her, to find a way to break through her obsession, but Toga only became more desperate, each attack infused with a sense of longing that was both disturbing and tragic. Before he could react, Toga lunged forward, her knife flashing in the dim light, and Deku dodged, blocking her attacks. Reiko's plant luck quirk left a trail of vines around her as she quickly took in the scene, her gaze hardening as she met Toga's eyes, but the fight was abruptly interrupted by a burst of green light. Reiko firmly said, "Step away from him," in a steady, composed voice. "Oh, you're the other one, aren't you?" Toga said, narrowing her eyes and tightening her hold on her knife. With a twisted smile on her face, she said, "You care about him too, I wonder who he'll choose in the end." "This isn't about that," Reiko said, her gaze fixed and her jaw clenched. "Toga, you must quit causing harm to others. You heroes are all the same," Toga said with a sour laugh, "believing that you know what's best for everyone." Reiko sprang forward without hesitation, her movements quick and accurate as she fought Toga, and as the two engaged in a barrage of blows, each attempting to gain the upper hand, vines grew from the ground and wound around Toga's legs to slow her down, but Toga twisted out of reach, her knife flashing as she retaliated. Reiko's eyes flickered to him, a silent message between them, and Deku watched, divided between trusting her to handle Toga and helping her. He could see the strength in her eyes, the determination that came from years of fighting alongside her friends and defending those she loved. She said, "Go," finding Shigaraki, her voice steady in spite of the fight. "I'll take care of Toga." Deku paused, but Reiko's determination was unwavering, and he nodded, giving her a final thank you glance before heading out. Reiko's teleportation power activated as he moved, however, and she reached out and touched Deku's shoulder, and in a flash of green light, he was gone, taken to the place she knew he needed to be. Deku appeared in another area of the battlefield, his heart racing as he centered himself, the ground covered in the remnants of a bloody battle, the air heavy with dust and debris, and then he saw them, Shigaraki, standing in the middle of the destruction, his eyes unblinking and icy. But Deku's attention was drawn to more than just Shigaraki. A sense of dread tore at Deku's heart as he took in the sight of Bakugo sprawled on the battlefield not far from where he stood, his face pale and lifeless, blood staining the earth around him. Bakugo's usual fierce expression was missing. As she struggled to keep Shigaraki at bay, Kuri knelt next to Bakugo, her face pale and strained, her hands shaking with the effort, her breath coming in short gasps as she struggled to maintain her quirk, her eyes wide with fear and desperation, her entire focus on protecting Bakugo while she attempted to heal his wounds. Deku took a step forward, his eyes fixed on Shigaraki, his fists clenched as he felt the power of one for all surge within him, and whispered, Curry, no, his heart twisted with a mixture of fear and rage. Sensing his presence, Curry's head snapped up, her expression both relieved and distressed. Deku, please, help him, she said. The realization that they were running out of time and that it was now his responsibility to save the people he loved caused Deku's eyes to harden as he turned to face Shigaraki, the battle bearing down on him like never before. As Bakugo and Reiko faced off against Shigaraki, the battlefield was a raging conflagration, with dust and devastation rushing all around them. With every clash, the air crackled with tension and the ground shook. Standing next to Bakugo, Reiko's plant and luck quirks combined to form protective layers, with vines encircling them and her luck quirk gently directing their movements. Shigaraki's power was too great for her to handle, no matter how hard she tried. With his face fixed in ferocious determination, Bakugo launched himself at Shigaraki, his explosions filling the air. He yelled, "Stay close, Reiko," without averting his gaze from their adversary. "I need you to keep me covered." Reiko's jaw tightened as she nodded. She built a wall of vines that deflected debris and prevented Shigaraki from reaching them thanks to her peculiar luck. But this was only temporary, she knew. The battlefield was reduced to a wasteland as Shigaraki's unrelenting power surged forward, devouring everything it came into contact with. Bakugo's explosions illuminated the battlefield, and as he repeatedly charged Shigaraki, his unwavering fierce resolve was evident. As Curry concentrated, her sacred arrows appeared in her hands and began to glow ethereally. With each arrow piercing the air like a comet, she aimed them at Shigaraki in quick succession. With a twisted smile, Shigaraki dodged the arrows and sneered. With a malicious tone, he mockingly asked, "Is that all you've got?" Curry's resolve hardened as she gritted her teeth. She attempted to restrain Shigaraki by pushing her barriers forward, each one glimmering with her energy as her power flared. But as his power eroded her defenses, Shigaraki's decay quirk pressed against them, causing the edges of her barriers to crumble. Bakugo gave her a quick look while speaking sharply. "Curry, don't hold back. Hit him with everything you've got." Curry inhaled deeply and regained her composure, using her quirk in a way she didn't often do. She used her empathy to reach out and concentrate on Shigaraki's feelings, clinging to the rage and hatred that burned inside of him. She could sense the twisted pain that propelled him forward, the anger simmering beneath his composed exterior. She then reversed it for him. In an attempt to overthrow his authority, she threw all of her energy into intensifying that anger. "Perhaps we can weaken him if I can make him lose himself in his own hatred." Shigaraki's movements stumbled for a second, and his face tensed as though he were resisting an invisible force. Curry exerted more force, using her empathy quirk to connect with the darkness within him and channel his anger back at him. She sensed his anger building, growing until it nearly overcame her. She grounded herself by taking a deep breath while clinging to the turbulent emotional storm. However, Shigaraki's voice was low and derisive, and his face contorted into a chilly smile. "You think you can use my anger against me?" he asked with a sardonic chuckle, resisting her influence as his hatred flared. He broke her grip with a sudden surge of energy that sent a shockwave through her head. Curry let out a gasp as his counter struck her with the force of a physical blow. Her barriers flickered as she staggered back, pain flaming in her head and blurring her vision. Shigaraki's anger was too strong for her to control, despite her best efforts. His hatred filled her own mind, its intensity choking her as her vitality diminished. Shigaraki lunged forward, his hand reaching for her before she could respond. When she attempted to erect another barrier, darkness closed in and the world whirled around her. "Your defenses are impressive," Shigaraki said with a sneer that reverberated with hate. "But they won't save you." Shigaraki's arm suddenly sprang out, aiming deadly intently at Reiko. Shigaraki was forced to stumble back when Bakugo, who was faster, intercepted him mid-strike with a huge explosion. Bakugo braced himself, pushing his quirk to its limit, and his eyes flashed with fierce determination. "Don't even think about touching her," Bakugo snarled in an angry tone. He turned to look at Reiko, their unspoken connection driving them on. Together, they had encountered many perils, but this one was unique. It was a matter of life or death. As Reiko prepared to teleport herself and Bakugo to a safer distance, she raised her hand and a pulsing orb of light formed. But Bakugo's expression hardened as he shook his head. "No, Reiko," he firmly stated, meeting her eyes. "You're getting out of here." Her eyes were filled with shock and defiance as she gazed at him. "I'm not leaving you, Katsuki. Not like this." Bakugo's voice grew softer, but his determination did not change. He grabbed her shoulder and said, I need you to trust me, Reiko. If you stay, he'll kill us both. But if you get out, you can help keep fighting. Just go, now. With anger and helplessness rushing through her, Reiko's heart twisted. When he was facing Shigaraki by himself, she didn't want to abandon him. However, she could see the intensity of his resolve and the fierce protectiveness that had motivated him from the start as she gazed into his eyes. Bakugo gave her one last shove, pushing her into the teleportation field as she reluctantly activated her orb, the green glow enveloping her. She vanished in an instant as the battlefield changed around her. Reiko appeared in a different area of the battlefield, stumbling a little as her surroundings came back into focus. She felt angry at Bakugo for pushing her away, angry at herself for not being able to stay and defend him. Her heart was racing. She balled her fists, prepared to return to the battle, but before she could move, a well-known figure appeared out of the darkness. Himiko Toga was there, her face contorted with a mixture of curiosity and laughter. Toga whispered, "Oh, it's you," in a quiet but ominous tone. "The girl who's always by Bakugo's side. Did he finally push you away?" Reiko's anger simmered beneath the surface as her eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you're talking about." With a hint of ill intent in her eyes, Toga's smile expanded. Her tone became mocking as she said, "Oh, but I do. I know what it's like to want to be close to someone, only for them to push you away." Poor Bakugo, all alone against Shigaraki. With a sudden loss of control, Reiko lunged forward, her plant quirk coming to life as vines sprang out and brutally coiled around Toga. Her voice was angry as she growled, "Don't you dare talk about him like that." As Reiko's vines grew tighter around Toga, she struggled, her eyes widening in surprise. Reiko's power flared with an intensity she didn't realize she had, fueled by her rage. Toga looked up, her eyes shining with an odd sense of satisfaction as the vines narrowed and tightened around her. With a twisted smile on her lips, Toga whispered, "So this is what it feels like, to be loved so fiercely." Reiko clenched her jaw, trying to maintain her composure. The worry tore at her heart as she remembered Bakugo fighting Shigaraki by himself. At that moment, Deku emerged and saw Reiko bringing Toga under control. He could see the depth of her feelings as he observed her expression, which was lined with concern. "Reiko," exclaimed Deku as he moved in her direction. "We need to go. Hurry, she's alone with Shigaraki." Reiko tightened her hold on Toga, but she made herself let go of the villain and turned her attention to Deku. Raising her hand, she called forth her orb and covered Deku's shoulder with it. She muttered, "Go help him, Deku," in an urgent tone. "I'll handle things here." Energy pulsed through the orb, and Deku vanished in a flash, teleported back to Bakugo's side. Kuri's body hurt from exhaustion, and the world was blurry when she opened her eyes at last. She sat up with difficulty, her eyesight clearing as she surveyed her surroundings. Debris was strewn all around her like the aftermath of a storm, and the battlefield was eerily silent. Then she caught sight of him. Bakugo was lying close by, motionless and dead on the ground. His once fierce expression was now slack and unresponsive, and the earth around him was stained with blood. The sight hit her with a fear she had never experienced before, and her heart stopped. Whispering, "No, no, this can't be happening," she crawled over to him, her hands shaking as she extended her hand. In a desperate attempt to sense life, her fingers touched his shoulder, but his skin was cold and his breathing was hardly noticeable. She gasped, "Katsuki," her voice cracking. She attempted to use her healing abilities, giving him her whole attention, but the fight with Shigaraki had almost depleted her of her energy. She was barely able to protect them from the devastation surrounding them with a feeble barrier. She heard footsteps behind her and looked up to see Shigaraki approaching, staring at her and Bakugo with a chilly expression. Her hands tightened as she braced herself, her barrier flickering but holding steady as a wave of anger swept through her. You won't touch him," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. With a cunning gleam in his eyes, Shigaraki grinned. "You're still trying to protect him? How pathetic." Kuri stood over Bakugo's motionless form, her barrier glowing brighter as she gritted her teeth and mustered what little strength she still had. She prevented Shigaraki from getting to him. No, not while she was still alive. But her body was on the verge of collapsing, and the edges of her vision were becoming darker. She would not give up even though she knew she wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Not right now, not when she was needed by Bakugo. Shigaraki was about to strike when she saw a flash of green light. As Reiko and Himiko Toga engaged in combat, the sound of the battle reverberated throughout the deteriorating battlefield. Standing in the middle of the debris, the two women's eyes met in a silent, nonverbal understanding. It was just the two of them, attempting to prove something that the other could never fully comprehend in a world that was a blur of chaos. Toga's smile was both tragic and playful, and her eyes gleamed with a mix of longing and joy. With an eerie curiosity, she tilted her head and asked, "You're the girl who loves Bakugo, aren't you? You're like me, then. We're both in love with people who can't fully understand us." With the dust surrounding them illuminated by the green glow of Reiko's quirk, her expression hardened. "I'm nothing like you, Toga. You twist love into something cruel, something dangerous." A glimmer of pain briefly appeared in Toga's eyes as her smile wavered. "Cruel? No, no, you don't understand," she exclaimed, her voice breaking in frustration. "I love them, Jin, Izuku, the friends of Lost. I love them so much that it hurts. Why can't you see that? Why can't they see that?" A fleeting glimpse of the broken girl behind the villain's mask gave Reiko a twinge of sympathy. She was unable to falter, though. As she spoke, vines unfurled and twisted defensively around her, calling forth her plant quirk. "Because love isn't just about how you feel, Toga. It's about what you're willing to do for the people you care about." Toga's face contorted into a mask of bewilderment and annoyance as her eyes narrowed. She moved closer, her movements erratic, almost childlike in their intensity, and asked, "Then tell me, why didn't you go to Bakugo when he needed you? Why did you send Deku instead? Isn't love supposed to be selfish? Don't you want to be the one by his side?" Despite the pain in her heart, Reiko refused to back down. She stated, "Of course I wanted to go to him," in a calm yet passionate voice. "But real love means giving him what he needs, not what I want. And in that moment, he needed Deku more than he needed me. He needed someone who could fight with him at full strength, who could stand against Shigaraki and protect him." As Toga absorbed Reiko's words, her fierce determination wavered and her expression changed. With an odd sadness in her eyes, she whispered, "You gave him up, because you love him that much?" "Yes," Reiko uttered in a broken voice. "Because Bakugo's life means more to me than my own desires. That's what love is, Toga. It's sacrifice." With tears in her eyes, Toga's hands shook and her knives fell to the floor. Something softer, almost human, took the place of the manic energy that had left her face. As the tears rolled down her cheeks, she shook her head and gave a broken laugh. "Sacrifice, so that's what it is. I wanted them to see me, to love me the way I loved them. But maybe I never understood." As Reiko observed Toga and saw the realization in the villain's eyes, her guard went down a little. They were silent for a while, the commotion of the battlefield receding into the distance. Toga said, "Go to him," in a voice that was hardly audible. As her body swayed, she grinned a resigned, bittersweet smile and said, "Go to the one you love, Reiko. Be with him, while you still can. I'm tired of fighting for a love that doesn't understand me." Toga collapsed to the ground before Reiko could respond, the life vanishing from her eyes as she muttered, "Be free." With Toga's last words bearing down on her, Reiko's heart tightened. She couldn't decide whether to be relieved or sad for the girl who had devoted her life to pursuing a love she would never be able to fulfill. However, there was no time to reflect or grieve. Bakugo needed her as the battle continued to rage. Reiko ran to the clearing where Bakugo had fought, her heart racing with both fear and hope. However, her breath caught in her throat as soon as she saw him. Bakugo's body was bleeding and lifeless as he lay motionless and crumpled on the ground. As the reality of the situation dawned on her, everything around her seemed to crumble. She screamed, "No, Katsuki!" and dropped to her knees next to him, reaching for him with trembling hands. She felt the oppressive, unrelenting weight of loss crashing over her. The roar of Deku's fury blended with the raw, piercing sound of her cry as it reverberated throughout the battlefield. A testament to the cost of war and the price of love, the two sounds reverberated throughout the battlefield, a roar of rage and a cry of grief. The battlefield was a chaotic storm. As Deku landed in the clearing where Kuri knelt over Bakugo's dead body, the air was heavy with dust and debris. The sight made his heart tighten, and waves of shock and disbelief swept over him. His friend and rival, Bakugo, lay motionless, white, and covered in blood. Deku's surroundings became hazy, and he let out a low, guttural sound. "No, no, Kachan!" Deku yelled, running in their direction, her eyes wild and wide with sorrow. One for All blazed around him in a storm of raw power and green lightning as his emotions erupted out of control. As he confronted Shigaraki, who stood with a smug, aloof grin, his anger grew like a tidal wave, threatening to overwhelm him. Still worn out and bruised from the fight, Kuri concentrated all of her strength on Bakugo. Knowing the price the ritual would cost her, tears ran down her cheeks as she started. Her voice trembled as she uttered the incantation, her hands glowing with a gentle blue-white light as she touched Bakugo's chest. She whispered, "By the bond of life and the gift of the soul, return," as the light grew brighter and illuminated Bakugo's form. As she poured her soul into Bakugo, each word felt like a knife slicing further into her being. As Bakugo was surrounded by the glow, time seemed to stop. He drew a sharp, ragged breath, breaking the deafening silence. Dazed and confused, his eyes fluttered open. With her last remaining energy ebbing away, Kuri gasped and sagged to the side, barely able to support herself. Bakugo's wide, incredulous eyes met hers. "Kuri, what did you do?" he said in a raspy, emotionally charged voice. With a look of pain on his face, he sat up and reached out to support her. She forced a feeble grin. "I did what I had to," she said in a barely audible whisper. "No," Bakugo said, drawing her nearer while his eyes blazed. "You shouldn't have. Don't tell Deku, please. He can't know." A sob ripped through the air before she could reply. When Bakugo was discovered alive, Reiko, who had been fighting close by, let her guard down. She ran to him with tears in her eyes, collapsed next to him, and threw her arms around him in relief. She stammered, "Katsuki, I thought I lost you," as her voice wavered. As he returned her embrace and held her close, Bakugo's expression softened and a rare vulnerability flashed across his features. However, the brief respite was short-lived as Deku's power surged in an uncontrollably wild manner. One for all whipped through him like tendrils of energy, causing the air to crackle. The anger and sorrow of the moment filled his wide, blind eyes. His fists glowed with a terrifying intensity as he launched himself at Shigaraki. "You," Izuku said in a low, shaky voice. Around him, One for All's green lightning flared, wild and crackling, but something was different this time. He felt a new power that he had never used before stirring within him. The echo of the second user's body pushed him on. Change gears. Izuku's muscles stiffened as the power flooded his veins, triggering the second user's quirk. As he took in Shigaraki's sly smile, the blood on the floor, and Reiko's quiet sobs, the chaos all around him seemed to slow down for a heartbeat. Then he made a move. Izuku's body suddenly blurred with speed, and he was hurtling toward Shigaraki with such force that the air around him cracked. Dust and debris flew in his wake as shockwaves rippled out due to the sheer velocity. Shigaraki's eyes grew wide, and the arrogant grin vanished from his face as Izuku materialized in front of him more quickly than any hero had ever moved. With a sound like a cannon blast, Izuku's fist struck Shigaraki's jaw. The force of the blow caused the villain's head to snap back, lifting his body off the ground. Izuku shifted once more, moving more quickly than before, and punched Shigaraki once more before he could react. The anguish and rage coursing through Izuku's veins, the destruction of witnessing his friend lying dead behind him, drove every blow. Shigaraki recovered and met Izuku's gaze, his eyes narrowing as he became aware of the hero's newfound strength. As he prepared to strike back, he braced himself, decay rushing around his hands. With a dark smile that split his face, Shigaraki spat, "Do you think your rage will make a difference, hero? Your grief only makes you weak." Izuku, however, didn't answer. He was guided by the second user's vestige, which pulsed within him. Every change in speed was deliberate and exact. He was struck by the memory of Bakugo's unwavering resolve, the pain emanating from Reiko's cries, and the weight of his friend's sacrifices. All of it fed him, transforming his grief into determination. Izuku yelled, "Gear shift, full throttle," as he unleashed a torrent of blows on Shigaraki, each of which was powerful enough to cause the ground to tremble. Green lightning and decaying sparks clashed in a power explosion that sent the air trembling with the fight's sheer intensity. Blood trickled from a split lip as Shigaraki stumbled, but despite the agony, he smiled. "Impressive, but you're too late." His eyes strayed from Izuku to Reiko and Bakugo's motionless figure. "You already failed." Izuku's heart contorted as the sorrow threatened to overtake him once more. Then, though, he heard a voice behind him that was clearly Kuri's, soft and broken. Fighting to stay awake, Kuri struggled to stand and staggered in Deku's direction. Her voice pierced the roar of power as she put her arms around him from behind and pressed her cheek against his. "Enough," she said softly but firmly in a whisper. The warmth of the word cut through Deku's quirk's storm. When Deku felt her touch and heard her voice, he froze and his eyes lost their wild gleam. The energy crackling around him slowed, and the rage subsided. He swiveled to look into her eyes and saw the pain, the tiredness, and the soft relief. "Kuri, you're alive," he exhaled as the realization dawned. His gaze shifted to Bakugo, who was breathing, conscious, and supported by Reiko. He let out a trembling breath, regaining his composure as relief overcame him. With a small, comforting smile on her face, Kuri nodded. "We're all here. We're all safe." However, the respite was brief. As Kuri pieced together what had happened, Shigaraki's icy gaze fixed on him and a menacing smile spread across his face. With a venomous tone, he said, "So, you gave up a piece of yourself to save him, didn't you? How noble. But tell me, hero, do you even know what she sacrificed for him?" Kuri turned away, her face pained, and Deku's eyes widened, confusion and worry blending in his gaze. The terror of what it might entail gnawed at him as the realization struck him like a blow. The sound of Shigaraki's laughter reverberated all around them. "A piece of her soul. She won't be the same again, Deku. How will you fight knowing that?" As he looked into Kuri's eyes, Deku's heart tightened as the significance of Shigaraki's remarks set in. The air was heavy with smoke and the glow of distant fires, and the battlefield crackled with the sounds of combat. Kuri stood in the middle of the mayhem, exhausted from the constant struggle. A familiar pulse shot through her before she could catch her breath, and then her orb of light swallowed her and carried her away. She was standing on burned ground with flames all around her when the glow dimmed. Shoto Todoroki and his brother Toya, who was now Dabi, squared off in front of her. The air was heavy with the pungent smell of smoke and burning rubble, and the heat was oppressive. Shoto held the line as best he could, his ice crackling in sharp contrast to the fire. "Kuri," Shoto's strained yet firm voice called out to her. The battlefield temporarily vanished as his two-hued eyes locked with hers. "I need you," he said, his normally stoic expression showing a rare vulnerability. "Like when we were kids. I can't do this alone." Kuri reminisced about their early friendship, which was characterized by laughter, secrets, and unspoken understanding. She inhaled deeply, gathering her strength, and moved forward, her barriers glimmering all around her as she readied herself to confront the danger in front of them. Like his fire, Dabi's blue eyes were fixed on her. They flashed recognition, then a twisted smile. Well, if it isn't the little girl who got away," he said with a bitter sneer. "You escaped your family's chains, didn't you? While I was left to burn." The accusation made Kuri's heart tighten, guilt and rage fighting inside of her. "Toya, Dabi, you don't understand." "I don't understand," Dabi roared, his scarred face harshly shadowed by the fire that erupted around him as he approached. "I know exactly what you are, Kuri. You're just like me, raised by someone who saw us as tools, forced into this hero world against our will." His words sliced deep, and Kuri winced. It brought back memories of her grams, the brutal training, and the constant pressure to be the ideal hero. However, now was the moment to fight, not to break. Sweat trickled down her face as the heat grew stronger, and she lifted her barriers to block the flames that rushed toward her. As he went on, Dabi's eyes narrowed and a sly smile played on his lips. "Did you know what your precious grams does in Tartarus? She rips quirks away from inmates, tears them apart like they're nothing. And you," he said, pointing to her, "you have that power, don't you? The power to destroy quirks. Face it, Kuri, you're one of us, bound to torment and ruin." Although the accusation made her shudder, Kuri refused to back down. "No, Toya, that's not who I am. I choose to fight for something better, for people who deserve to be saved." Dabi gave a harsh, broken laugh. He challenged, "Then prove it," as he moved closer, his fire blazing the ground between them. "End my suffering, steal my quirk and put an end to me. Do your job, hero." Another wave of blue fire rushed toward Kuri before she could react, but she used a barrier to stop it, her hands shaking from the strain. Each word and blow pierced her doubts and fears more deeply, making the battle feel like a cruel test. Shoto suddenly moved forward, his body radiating a dazzling mixture of fire and ice, his eyes burning with resolve. The potent heat and cold combined to form phosphor, a new force. His voice was steady and determined as he stood between Kuri and Dabi. "Don't give up, Ni-san. It's not too late to come home." The unexpected words struck a deep chord with Dabi, causing his eyes to widen. The fire surrounding him wavered for a moment, as though the flames themselves were hesitating. As he launched his attack, Shoto's body was a blur, the combined power of fire and ice rushing toward Dabi with unstoppable force. Blue flames licked at the edges of the charred ground as the battlefield blazed brightly. As they faced Dabi, Shoto and Curry stood side by side, their combined resolve unwavering. Despite the heat crackling in the air and the weight of each breath, neither of them faltered. Dabi's eyes were burning with pain and hate, and his laughter reverberated through the flames. His fire flared around him as he sneered, "Do you really think you can stop me? I've come too far, endured too much. There's nothing left to save." Phosphor's radiance illuminated Shoto's face as his dual-colored eyes narrowed. "You're wrong, Ni-san," he stated in a confident and steady tone. "There's always something worth saving. You're still alive, and as long as you are, there's hope." Dabi's face twisted, a mixture of grief and rage showing on his scarred face. He roared, "Hope," and threw a stream of blue fire in their direction. "Where was hope when I was left to burn? Where was hope when I was abandoned?" With his phosphor flaring brilliantly, Shoto stepped forward to counter the attack with a burst of ice and fire. The ground beneath them was shaken by the blinding explosion that resulted from their flames colliding. Raising her barriers, Curry protected Shoto and herself from the blast's worst effects. Curry yelled, "Toya, stop this." Her voice piercing the confusion. "This isn't who you are. This isn't who you have to be." Dabi's inner turmoil was reflected in the rising flames. He spat, "Don't pretend to understand me," his voice shaking with anger. "You escaped your family. I didn't." Curry took a step forward, blocking another wave of fire with shimmering barriers. "Despite the heat," she said, "I did escape," in a steady voice. "But I'm still fighting to make things right. Just like Shoto is." Shoto took advantage of the moment of hesitation when Dabi's eyes flickered. Leaping forward, he unleashed a devastating mix of fire and ice, his phosphor burning with radiant intensity. Dabi stumbled back as the attack hit him squarely. His fires wavered but did not go out entirely. Shoto said, "You don't have to keep fighting, Ni-san," in a softer tone. "You don't have to keep burning." Dabi went to his knees and struggled to get up, his body shaking. His strength diminished as the fire surrounding him flickered and dimmed. However, the anger still blazed in his eyes, a defiant spark that would not go out. With caution, Curry reached out to him, her empathy quirk flaring. As a precaution, she knelt next to him and put a gentle hand on his head while keeping her barriers in place. "Toya," she said quietly, with a quiet strength in her voice. "Let me help you." Dabi tensed up and winced, but he didn't retreat. Curry closed her eyes, concentrating her eccentricity on the whirlwind of feelings inside of him. She experienced the intense pain, the unadulterated rage, and the overwhelming hopelessness that overcame him. She felt something else, though, a tiny, fluttering ember of desire beneath it all, a wish to put an end to suffering and achieve peace. "You don't have to do this anymore," she said in a calming whisper. "You don't have to fight. You don't have to burn." As she spoke, Dabi's body loosened up a little and his flames grew dimmer. An exhaustion that went beyond mere physical pain took the place of the fight in his eyes. He appeared vulnerable, almost human, for the first time. He said, "I'm tired," in a voice that was hardly audible. "I'm so tired." Shoto took a step forward, his face softening as he gazed at his brother. "Then stop, Ni-san. Let us help you." With the last of his fire fading, Dabi closed his eyes. The battle seemed to be coming to an end, and for a moment there was silence on the battlefield as the tension subsided. Then, however, Curry's empathy quirk ignited a tiny, nearly undetectable spark inside of him, a deep-seated but still alive spark of rage. The realization that Dabi's anger was still present made her heart tighten. All it had done was be tamed, dormant beneath the surface. With his phosphor still ready, Shoto tightened his stance as he saw the glimmer of worry in her eyes. "Curry." Her voice was hardly more than a whisper as she shook her head. "He's not done, not completely." Slowly, Dabi's eyes opened, the flame of defiance still blazing in his eyes. A twisted, bittersweet smile flickered across his lips. "You think you've won," he muttered in a raspy voice. "But you can't extinguish what's already been set ablaze." He then gave himself over to the darkness. It was an unsung victory, but the battle was over. The conflict between good and evil caused the battlefield to tremble. The air was filled with smoke, flames, and the echoes of battle, but everyone's attention was focused on the confrontation at its core. Izuku Midoriya, his one for all blazing with unwavering power, taking on the terrifying combination of Tamura Shigaraki and All for One. Through the confusion, Deku's voice could be heard. He asked in a desperate tone, "Is Tamura Shigaraki still in there?" As if he were a hero trying to find some human element in the monster in front of him. There was silence for a moment. Then, Tamura gave a deep, rumbling chuckle that developed into a dark, derisive cackle. "Tamura Shigaraki," he sneered, adding all for one's poisonous undertones to his voice. "He no longer exists. We have merged into something far greater. The child you're searching for is gone." Deku shuddered at the statement, but Reiko, who was standing close by, wasn't persuaded. She thought back to their last battle, when she had taunted this new entity, and her fox ears twitched. "Oh, really?" she shot back in a confident, sharp voice. "Because the last time I spoke harshly to you, you threw a tantrum like a little kid." A flicker of something raw and volatile flashed in Tamura's eyes as the smirk on his face wavered. He snarled, "You don't know what you're talking about," his voice quivering with a hint of instability. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," Reiko said, narrowing her green eyes. "You're not fully merged, are you? No matter how much you try to pretend, you're not as in control as you think." She was right on the money. Tamura growled, his left arm shaking a little as the disembodied faces shifted and twisted in strange ways. Kotaro Shimura's face caught Nana Shimura's attention, his eyes wide with anguish and terror. As she spoke to Deku, her voice wavered. "He's still in there, Kotaro, and maybe Tamura, too." The creature screamed gutturously, trembling all over as though the words were hurting him physically. He roared and leapt into the air, shaking the entire fortress with the force of his movement. He yelled, "Enough," as his voice reverberated throughout the combat zone. "I'm taking back One for All, and I'll destroy everything you love in the process." He fell like a meteor, wreaking havoc all over the battlefield with his smash. The force of the attack caused the ground to crack and buckle, but Deku confronted it directly. With the green lightning crackling like a storm all around him, his resolve was evident in his emerald eyes as he channeled the power of One for All. Deku yelled, "You're the one who won't get your ideal ending," and simultaneously activated Fa Jin and Black Whip. Black Chain, a glowing chain of energy, was created by the combined power. Deku sped up and wrapped the chain around Tamura's arm, pulling him in midair and launching him into the debris. Tamura let out a roar of annoyance and used all of his strength to claw at the chain. "You think I'll fall for the same move again?" he yelled, struggling to free himself by wrenching his arm. Deku, however, shocked him by removing the chain by himself. Deku whispered, "I'm not playing games," his eyes intense and gloomy. The second user's voice resounded in his head as he steadied himself. "Make it quick, kid. Once you use my quirk, you've got 5 minutes. Finish this, or the world is doomed." Deku clenched his fists and nodded to himself. He felt the power surge through him as he engaged Gearshift, the second user's quirk. In an instant, he reappeared beneath Tamura, after vanishing in a flash. Deku yelled, "Transmission," as the new ultimate move began to take shape. He struck Tamura with second gear, third gear, and top gear in quick succession, increasing the force and speed of each blow. The battlefield was rocked by each blow, which confused Tamura. Watching from below, Reiko's fox ears picked up the slightest delay in the sound of each impact, causing her to blink in shock. "The sound, it's behind the attack," she whispered, taken aback by Deku's quickness. Tamura struggled to respond, his body hurled into the air, his face contorted in confusion and rage. "This power, it's different," Tamura growled, his voice trembling. "You're faster, stronger." Deku persisted. He pushed One for All to its limit by activating Gearshift, Overdrive with a last surge of energy. His body radiated a glowing green aura as his power surged to 120%. "This ends now," Deku exclaimed, his voice bearing the weight of all the sacrifices he had made and all the hopes he had for his triumph. He launched a fully charged Detroit Smash straight into Tamura's stomach using the force of overdrive. The impact split the air with its force, sending shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. Tamura was thrown to the ground, leaving a huge crater as a result of the impact. The only sound on the battlefield for a brief moment was the crackling of far-off flames. However, despite his injuries, Tamura coughed, his voice low and mocking. "You're just like her," he growled, a vicious smile forming on his lips. "Curry, always sacrificing, always giving up a piece of herself for others. And for what? Do you really think she loves you, Deku? She sees you the way everyone does, a useless loser. Just like your name." Deku's fists clenched as he thought about Curry's selflessness, tenacity, and unsaid strength. Refusing to be shaken by the words, he steadied himself. Firmly, "I don't fight for myself," he declared. "I fight for everyone who's counting on me. That's why you'll never win." Deku was about to strike again when a shout from a distance diverted his focus. "Curry!" exclaimed Reiko as she heard a voice that only she could hear, Curry frantically attempting to call forth an orb. Her face was white with fatigue, and her hands were shaking. However, a sound, the slow, agonized gasp of someone breathing, pierced the atmosphere before the orb could form. With a low, rasping chuckle, Dobby's eyes cracked open and his broken, scorched body shifted slightly. Curry froze at the sight, her hands shaking as a chilling fear swept over her. Through the blood-stained battlefield, Deku could only hear Reiko's voice calling out for her sister. He pondered whether it was too late once more. For a split second, All for One stood motionless as chaos and devastation erupted on the battlefield, his red eyes narrowing as his thoughts turned to a long-forgotten memory. The determination and defiance of the heroes' faces stirred something deep inside him, a memory of a time when his dominion had first been questioned. Long shadows were cast on the walls by the flickering light of a single lantern in the dimly lit room. All for One was a towering, darkly clad figure whose presence was oppressive. His younger brother Yoichi stood across from him, his body weak but his determination unwavering. A woman with long black hair pulled back and defiant eyes stood next to Yoichi. All for One looked at her and said in a smooth, mocking voice, "Midoriko. Still clinging to my weak, idealistic brother. What a waste of your talents. Together, we could have created perfection, yet here you are, standing against me." Midoriko's voice was piercing and unforgiving. "Your perfection is built on lies, suffering, and control. You destroy everything you touch. I won't let you take any more from this world." With a steadying hand on her arm, Yoichi took a step forward. He said, "Brother, it's not too late," in a firm but pleading tone. "You don't have to do this. Let go of your obsession with power. This isn't the way." There was a low, mocking laugh from All for One. "Spare me your sanctimonious drivel, brother. Your so-called hope is nothing but a futile dream. And you, Midoriko," he continued in a more icy voice, "you think your quirk, not for any, will stop me. You'd destroy quirks and lives alike in your quest to protect this fragile peace." Midoriko stepped forward, her hand glowing faintly with the energy of her quirk, her gaze hardening. "If it means saving even one person from your tyranny, I'll do whatever it takes." Yoichi nodded, his determination equaling hers. "Together, we'll stop you." A flash of rage replaced All for One's smile. "You're both fools. This world belongs to me." As the scene vanished and All for One's thoughts turned back to the present, the memory became hazy. All for One's eyes swept across the battlefield, settling on two figures coming into view. Kaori, the powerful carrier of Not for Any, her presence commanding and unflinching, and All Might, his once great frame wrapped in a mechanical support suit. As they got closer, Kaori said, All Might, in a clipped voice. "You should have stayed in retirement. You're barely standing as it is." There was remorse and resolve in All Might's voice. "Kaori, I never got the chance to apologize for everything that happened. For the choices I made back then." Kaori's piercing eyes briefly met his but did not stay. "Save your apologies, Toshinori," she said icily. "We have more important things to deal with. You should have stayed in the shadows. You're not what you once were." All Might remained unflinching. "Maybe not," he said in a steady voice. "But I'm still a hero. And heroes don't run away." There was a brief flash of respect in Kaori's eyes as her piercing gaze shifted to him. "Save the speeches," she whispered. "We've got work to do." A voice called out from above before more could be said. With his red wings spread wide and a composed yet emotional expression, Hawks descended elegantly. He said, "Kaori," and landed close to her. "Grandmother." For a brief moment, Kaori's normally stoic demeanor broke as she froze. She whispered, "What did you call me?" Hawks repeated, "Grandmother," his gaze locking with hers. "It's good to see you again. I remember everything." Kaori's expression changed from astonishment to apprehension. "How could you possibly remember?" Hawks grinned a little. "You think I'd forget the person who shaped so much of who I am? I've always remembered." All for One's derisive laughter interrupted Kaori before she could reply. Sneering, "A family reunion," he said. "How touching. Let me guess, Kaori, you cast him off like garbage because he was male. A brilliant strategy. Better than anything I could have devised to destroy you." Kaori's fox ears twitched in rage, and her posture stiffened as her jaw tightened. She said, "You know nothing about my choices," in a low, menacing voice. All for One's tone changed to mock concern as he looked at Hawks. "And you, little bird, do you miss your sister? Poor, fragile thing. What was her name again?" "Oh, yes, Curry." Anger flared in Hawk's eyes, causing his wings to twitch and his composed mask to crack. "Don't you dare speak her name." All for One purred, "Oh, but I will," in a venomous tone. "I wonder, Hawks, do you ever think about what it would have been like if you hadn't been the weak one? If it had been her instead?" With his hand extended, All for One charged at all might at a terrifying speed. Hawks stepped in before he could attack, his feathers cutting through the air like a tempest of blades. Hawks yelled, "Get away from him!" As he protected All Might, his wings blazing with passion. With his crimson eyes shining, All for One turned to face the winged hero. "Keigo Hikawa, you're bold, I'll give you that. Changing your name to Takami was very smart, it fooled even Toya." With his quickness and accuracy, Hawks kept All for One on the defensive as he darted through the air. The villain had to dodge as his feathers cut through his defenses. Kaori took a step back and focused on All for One, her quirk subtly neutralizing as many of his powers as she could. Realizing the source of his stuttering attacks, All for One growled. "Kaori," he snarled, turning to face her fatally. With a malicious glow in his hand, he lunged forward. Without flinching, Kaori's barriers shimmered into place to deflect his blow. "You'll have to do better than that," she stated icily. Hawks shifted quickly, putting himself between Kaori and All for One. His golden eyes blazed with resolve, and his feathers formed a shield around her. "You're not touching her," he vowed. The smile of All for One reappeared, sharper and more sinister. "Ah, protecting the matriarch. How noble. But tell me, Keigo, do you think she'll cast you aside again once this is over?" Hawks remained steadfast. He spat out, "Say whatever you want, it won't change anything." All for One grinned broadly. "Good, then this will hurt even more." With terrifying speed, All for One reached for Hawk's throat, his hand glowing. His intent was clear, he would take Hawk's quirk and render him helpless. The air crackled with energy as he activated his quirk. Kaori responded right away. "Not today," she growled as she leapt onto All for One's back with surprising agility. She locked onto the core of his master quirk, her hands glowing with the power of Not for Any. "You want to talk about family? You wanna talk about my life? Let's talk about ending yours." As Kaori's power started to bind his quirk, All for One, he roared in rage and thrashed. The raw energy of the two forces' confrontation radiated outward, causing the battlefield to tremble. Hawks stumbled back, gasping for air and twitching his wings. He saw his grandmother's unwavering defiance as she stood her ground against the embodiment of evil. All for One roared, "You've made a mistake," his voice a menacing rumble. "You should have stayed in the shadows where you belong." Kaori tightened her hold, determination burning in her eyes. "I've lived in the shadows long enough." With the outcome in jeopardy, the battlefield erupted once more as the conflict went on. As Shoto and Curry stood over Dabi, the battlefield smoldered, blue fire fading into the ash-filled air. Shoto's body was still glowing dimly from the effects of phosphor, and his chest rose and fell with labored breaths. Curry stood by his side, her empathy quirk quivering with the echoes of her brother's suffering, her black and red wings spreading wide behind her like a shield. Shoto stated, "He's down," in a cautious yet determined tone. "We can't let him get back up." Curry paused, staring at Dabi's motionless body with a startled expression. Even with everything he had done, she could not handle the storm of pain radiating from him. She trembled as she whispered, "Toya, why can't you stop?" However, she responded with a low, raspy laugh. Dabi's voice, feeble but defiant, broke the tension as his body trembled. "Stop, do you think you've won?" he asked, his cracked lips twisting into a smile as his burned body started to rise and the flames around him flickered back to life. "You're still just kids, and I'm not done burning." Dabi was quicker than Shoto, who moved forward with ice wrapped around his arm. Curry and Shoto were forced to defend themselves as a sudden burst of blue fire erupted from his hands. Dabi vanished as the flames went out, leaving a trail of fire that led to the center of the battlefield. Shoto yelled, "No," in a frustrated tone. His mismatched eyes were blazing as he turned to face Curry. "He's going for my father." The red-black feathers on Curry's wings gleamed in the firelight as they fully unfolded. Her voice was urgent as she shot into the air. "We can't let him reach Endeavor. Shoto pursued her, leaving a trail of ice behind him, and they flew in the direction of their father's faraway figure. The dark energy of the villain radiated outward in waves as Endeavor stood opposite All for One. Kaori was standing close to him, her posture unwavering and her face unreadable. Every breath was heavy due to the oppressive aura, but neither faltered. Dabi's arrival increased the tension on the battlefield, which was blazing with intensity as crimson energy and blue fire clashed. All for One towered over it all like a gloomy titan, his grin menacing and his presence oppressive. With her green eyes blazing and her hands faintly glowing with the power of Not for Any, Kaori stood firm. Endeavor's flames roared beside her, his jaw clenched in resolve. With a mocking step forward, All for One spoke in a smooth, poisonous voice. "You're brave to confront me together," All for One remarked in a mockingly smooth voice. "But then again, failure unites even the most unlikely pairs, doesn't it?" With her hands glowing dimly with the power of Not for Any, Kaori's piercing green eyes narrowed. "I don't have time for your taunts, All for One," she stated icily. "Let's end this." Raising her hand, she moved in with precise blows, creating a barrier of translucent energy to obstruct his path. As All for One's advancing quirk was repelled, the barrier glowed slightly and shimmered with her power. Following her example, Endeavor lunged forward, flames encircling his fists. He yelled, "Incinerate," and let loose a torrent of flames that engulfed the villain. The intensity of the heat was so intense that the ground beneath their feet cracked. However, All for One moved through the flames with his evil aura intact. He shifted his focus from her to Endeavor, his smirk growing. "You've both failed so gloriously as parents, haven't you? Kaori, the great wielder of Not for Any, abandoning your grandson, abusing your granddaughters, and look where it brought them. Into the arms of the heroes trained by Toshinori Yagi, the very man you despised. If the two of you had trained Curry together to use Not for Any long ago, you would have defeated me already. Instead you defeated yourselves for me. All it took was a petty disagreement over the morality of removing quirks. When mine was the one you needed to worry about. Fools." Kaori's jaw tensed, but she remained silent. All Might regarded her sharply. As she raised another barrier, this time embedding it with the energy of Not for Any, Kaori's eyes flashed with rage. She pushed it forward, hoping to stifle his eccentricities, and it pulsed. "You'll never understand," she growled, sending All for One reeling backwards as the barrier slammed into him. "Oh, but I understand perfectly," said All for One, his smile growing longer. "Your failure wasn't just your own, Kaori. You passed it on to your descendants. Your precious granddaughter, Curry, is just as broken as you are, always giving, always sacrificing. And Hawks, cast aside because of his gender. A brilliant move on your part. It saved me the trouble of breaking him myself. And you, Endeavor," All for One added, looking at the flame hero with crimson eyes. "You built your legacy on the backs of your children, treating them as tools to surpass All Might. Yet here you are, standing on the battlefield, trying to repair what you broke. Tell me, does it feel good to fail as both a hero and a father?" As Endeavor moved forward, his fists caught fire and his flames roared to life. He roared, "Say what you want about me," in a fiery voice. "I'm still here to stop you." In an effort to hold All for One in place, Kaori conjured up a bigger barrier. She poured her energy into the construct and said, "We won't let you distract us," in a firm voice. Seizing the opportunity, Endeavor charged in with a precise blow, his flames roaring to life. Prominence burn. The assault blazed across the heavens, a blazing conflagration aimed at All for One. However, the villain retaliated with a blast of air pressure that stunned both Kaori and Endeavor, his quirk absorbing some of the impact. His mocking, dark laughter reverberated. "Do you think your combined strength can match me? I've lived for centuries, molded the world in my image, while you've been chasing after your own failures." Kaori mumbled under her breath and pushed herself back up, barriers forming again. "You don't know when to shut up." The sound of crackling fire filled the air before All for One could respond. As Dabi arrived, his body bruised but his determination unwavering, a trail of blue flames sliced through the battlefield. Raw and angry, his voice echoed, "Old man, you're not done with me yet." When Endeavor turned to face his son, his eyes grew wide and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. His voice faltered as he whispered, "Toya, you're..." With flames erupting all around him, Dabi interrupted, still alive. As he sat down next to All for One, his twisted smile came back. "You're not getting rid of me that easily, Dad. Izuku Midoriya hovered on the brink of another battle far above the mayhem, surrounded by the crackling green energy of One for All. But his eyes were fixed on the battle that was taking place far away. The battlefield was illuminated by Endeavor's flames, and Kaori's barriers shimmered as they resisted All for One's overwhelming power. His thoughts strayed to Kuri, and his chest constricted. Somewhere out there, she was fighting alongside Shoto in her own battle. With her red-black wings and unwavering strength, his beloved always sacrificed everything for the people she cared about. His focus was momentarily distracted by the idea of her being in danger, and his hold on his power faltered. Deku saw wings beat the sky out of nowhere. As Kuri and Shoto flew toward the scene, the heat from Dabi's flames washing over them, his green eyes followed her flight path. Kuri's chest tightened as she took in what was happening below, her wings pounding hard against the searing air. The collision of emotions, Dabi's anger, Endeavor's guilt, Kaori's quiet rage, and All for One's calculated malice, made her empathy quirk pulse painfully. "She'll be okay," he muttered to himself as he attempted to control his breathing. But he found it difficult to maintain that optimism in the face of what was happening. He had never encountered a force like All for One, and the thought of Kuri coming into contact with that monster made him shiver. The voice of All Might reverberated in his head, reminding him of his responsibility. "You're the one who will carry on the legacy. You're the one who must end this." Deku clenched his fists and tightened his jaw as he refocused. He whispered, "I have to trust her, I have to trust all of them." But his heart ached with concern even as he spoke. Images of Kuri's determined face, her wings spread wide as she dove into the chaos, flooded his mind. Their relationship pulled at him, serving as a continual reminder of what kept him going. A far-off scream, carried by the wind, pierced his mind. It was emotional, raw, and desperate. "Keigo." Deku turned to face the sound of Kuri's voice, fear gnawing at his chest as his heart sank. The battlefield was a devastation storm. As Deku avoided another devastating blow from Shigaraki, dust swirled around him, and the ground below him collapsed under the villain's might. As he pushed One for All to its limits, his body strained and his chest heaved with effort. "You're slipping, Deku," Shigaraki scoffed, his voice warped with hatred. He moved erratically but precisely, maximizing damage with each attack. "All that power, and you're still just a kid playing hero. Tell me, what are you fighting for?" Deku leapt into the air, using Black Whip to propel himself forward while clenching his fists and refusing to react. He quickly drew closer to Shigaraki, using Fa Jin's power to deliver a powerful blow. Shigaraki hardly flinched as the impact sent shockwaves through the air, absorbing the blow with his hideously changed body. "Still not enough," Shigaraki teased, his amused red eyes shining. "You can't win, you're too weak, too sentimental." Deku ignored the hurtful words and concentrated on the battle. Just in time to avoid Shigaraki's rotting hand, he ducked another blow and used danger sense. But as the fight continued, his mind started to stray, to Kuri. "Where are you at this moment, Kuri? Are you secure?" He visualized her. Her resolute eyes glowed with determination, her red-black wings spread wide. He recalled how she constantly challenged herself to defend the people she loved, even if it meant endangering herself. His heart tightened with anxiety at the thought of her out there, fighting her own battle. Shigaraki's voice sliced like a knife through his mind. He grinned and slowed his movements as though to appreciate the moment. "Ah, I see it now. You're distracted," he said. "Thinking about someone, aren't you? Someone you care about." Deku's jaw tensed and his eyes narrowed as he sprang forward, using gearshift to quicken his pace. He delivered a series of blows to Shigaraki, each more potent and swift than the last. But Shigaraki's words tore at him as he battled. Shigaraki went on, "She must mean a lot to you," easily deflecting the blows. He laughed darkly, his voice brimming with hate. "That girl with the wings, right? What's her name? Kuri, was it? She gave up everything for you, didn't she? Her power, her soul, and for what? A useless loser like you." Black Whip was used to temporarily restrain Shigaraki as Deku's rage flared and he launched himself higher into the air. He yelled, "Shut up!" in a trembling voice. "You don't know anything about her." His rotting hands tore through the energy like paper, and Shigaraki's smile grew as he escaped the bonds. "Oh, but I do," he remarked sarcastically. "I know she'll keep sacrificing herself for you, just like she did for Bakugo. And when she falls, it'll be your fault." Desperation and anger clouded Deku's vision. In an instant, he closed the distance between them by activating transmission, the second user's quirk. He launched a barrage of blows, all intended to take down Shigaraki, his fists glowing with the full force of One for All. The battle intensified, and as their powers clashed, the sky above them grew darker. But despite Deku's best efforts, Shigaraki's overwhelming strength, now completely united with All for One, seemed unbeatable. The villains moved, causing chaos to spread on the ground below. Kurogiri's containment capsule cracked amid the devastation. It was too late, despite the pro-hero's best efforts to keep the situation under control. The warp villain appeared with a jolt of evil energy, his hazy shape sweeping the battlefield. "Kurogiri!" exclaimed Present Mike in a desperate tone. "Don't do this." However, Kurogiri's bright eyes were fixed on Shigaraki. He uttered, "My duty is to protect Shigaraki Tamura," in a robotic yet uncanny resolve. Suddenly he opened a portal, and a number of villains disappeared into the whirling emptiness. Out of the corner of his eye, Deku saw the portal above, but he was unable to take his eyes off Shigaraki. His power surged as he prepared another blow, his body screaming in protest as he pushed One for All farther. Dabi rose from the ashes of his last defeat in another corner of the battlefield, and blue flames burst forth. His eyes burned with unrelenting rage, but his charred body trembled with effort. He hissed, "I'm not done yet," in a raspy yet defiant voice. As he advanced toward the center of the battlefield, his flames erupted around him, paving the way for devastation. Kuri's wings pounded hard against the hot air as Shoto and Kuri chased after him from above. Through her empathy, she was able to sense his anger, a burning pain that reflected the flames he let loose. She yelled, "Toya, stop!" with such passion that her voice cracked. However, he didn't go back. Dabi's path of devastation, Kurogiri's whirling portals, and the fleeing villains were all visible to Deku from his perch high above. His heart raced when he saw Kuri and Shoto pursuing, their silhouettes glowed in the blue flames. "Kuri," he muttered, his voice barely overpowering the bottle's roar. Her presence was palpable to him, and their connection tugged at his heart. As he returned his focus to Shigaraki, his determination solidified. Deku said, "She's stronger than you'll ever understand," in a steady voice that belied the rage he was feeling. "And I won't let you hurt her, or anyone else." Shigaraki's red eyes gleamed as he sneered. Big words from someone who's already lost so much. Deku roared and unleashed a fully charged Detroit Smash, shaking the battlefield as he forced Shigaraki to retreat. However, he realized the battle was far from over as the dust settled. As Dabi's blue flames charred the ground and blazed a fiery trail toward Endeavor and Shoto, the conflagration raged across the battlefield. Kuri flew right behind Shoto, her red-black feathers glowing slightly as they reflected the flames, her wings pounding against the oppressive heat. She sensed that Toya's pain and anger were burning as intensely as the flames around him. "Shoto!" Kuri yelled, her voice steady but sorrowful. "Should I save him?" At first, Shoto remained silent. His normally stoic face was tainted by uncertainty and sorrow as his gaze remained fixed on his older brother. He turned to her after a moment, his voice firm but gentle. "Can you put him back together?" Kuri paused. She could, but at an almost unthinkable price. At last, she admitted the truth. "I could, but..." With a trembling voice, Shoto finished for her. "But you'd die for it." With tears welling up in her eyes, Kuri nodded. Dabi stood in the distance, flames licking at his scarred body, and Shoto's eyes flickered with pain. "If Toya was in his right mind, he wouldn't want you to do that. Not for him, not for someone who doesn't even want to live anymore." His words broke Kuri's heart, but she knew he was correct. "Then I'll do what I can to protect you all," she muttered. After they touched down, Shoto sprinted in Dabi's direction. Already there was Endeavor, facing his oldest son with his towering form defined by his own flames. "Toya!" exclaimed Endeavor in a desperate tone. "Stop this, please, I'm begging you." Slowly, Dabi turned, a twisted smile curling his charred lips. His body shook from the strain of using his flames for so long, and his voice was hoarse. "Stop, you think you can make me stop, old man?" he exclaimed, spreading his arms wide as a ferocious burst of blue fire erupted around him. "This is all I've ever been: fire, destruction, and disappointment. All because of you." With a slight waning of his flames, Endeavor stepped forward. He said, "You're right," in a voice that broke. "Everything you've suffered is because of me. I'm sorry, Toya, I'm sorry for all of it." For a brief moment, Dabi faltered as something unreadable passed over his face, causing his flames to flicker. He spat, "Sorry, you think, sorry, will fix anything." Dobby stood at the center of his fire, his blackened body quivering under the pressure. The fire inside him would not go out, even though his body was crumbling and his blackened skin was cracking with every movement. His twisted smile was a mix of defiance and despair as he gazed at the family who had come to confront him. He rasped, "You all finally showed up," in a voice as coarse as the flickering embers surrounding him. "A family reunion, huh? Too bad you're too late. I've already decided how this ends." Toya, Endeavor uttered as he moved forward in spite of the intense heat. His voice was raw and heavy with emotion. "You don't have to do this. Stop this destruction before it's too late." "Too late?" Dobby asked again, laughing bitterly. As flames erupted violently around him, he spread his arms and said, "It's been too late since the moment you decided I wasn't good enough. I'm not stopping, not until everything you've built is reduced to ash." With his ice crackling against the heat, Shoto moved in next to his father. He said, "You're wrong, Ni-san," with a steady voice in spite of the turmoil in his eyes. "This isn't about what Dad built. This is about you, and what you've let yourself become." Dobby's flames surged higher as his smile turned into a snarl. "What I've become," he yelled. "I became this because of him," he said, gesturing to Endeavor with a charred hand. "Because I was never enough for him. Because he threw me away." Kuri gently touched down behind Shoto, folding her wings as she cautiously moved forward. She reached out toward Dobby's burning rage and suffering, feeling a surge of empathy. It was like being in the middle of a storm, overwhelming. She spoke quietly but firmly. "Toya, we're here to help you. Let us help." But all Dobby could do was laugh, a broken, resentful sound. "Help? You think I need help?" he asked, pointing to his disintegrating body and his uncontrollably raging flames. "There's nothing left of me to save." A quiet voice broke the heat. "That's not true, Toya." Fuyumi moved forward, her hands shaking from the heat of the flames, her face pale but determined. "You're still our brother. You always have been." Natsuo trailed behind, his face etched with years of grief and rage. Straightforwardly, "You're right, Toya," he said. "Dad failed you. We all failed you. But we're here now." As he turned to face them, Dobby's flames flickered, briefly losing their intensity. "Fuyumi, Natsuo," he uttered in a more subdued yet resentful tone. "You really think you can fix this? Fix me?" Despite the tension in his posture, Natsuo stepped forward and spoke steadily. "No, I don't think we can fix you, Toya. But we can be here for you. Isn't that what you wanted? For us to see you?" Once more, Dobby's flames faltered, and for the first time, a flicker of vulnerability appeared beneath the anger on his face. He muttered, You never looked for me. I was out there, burning alive, and none of you came." Tears welled up in Fuyumi's eyes. She said, "We didn't know," in a shaky voice. "But we're here now, Toya. Please, let us help you." As Dobby's body shook and the weight of his family's words pressed against the walls of his anger, the fire surrounding him started to fade. He stumbled and fell to his knees, his legs giving out. Then he rasped, "Why now? Why now, when it's already over?" Stepping forward, Rei Todoroki's face was filled with resolve despite being streaked with tears. She whispered, "Because we love you, Toya, no matter what, you're my son. You always have been." As Dobby looked at her, his charred face crumbled and his head rose. His voice broke, "Mom," as the flames surrounding him grew dimmer. Kuri felt the family's unadulterated emotion as she watched from behind them, her heart aching. As she silently called forth her quirk to put out the remaining flames and create a barrier of protection around the family, tears streamed down her cheeks. She held the barrier in place while standing sentinel, her wings quivering. "Toya," Rei added as she knelt next to him. "It's time to rest. You don't have to keep burning." As Dobby's flames flickered one last time, his body swayed and his strength gave out. On the opposite side, Shoto knelt and placed his shaking hands on his brother's shoulder. "You're enough, Ni-san," he uttered in a shattered voice. "You always were." They were joined by Natsuo and Fuyumi, who surrounded Dobby as his body failed. Only the faint glow of the barrier surrounding them and silence remained as the flames completely subsided. Dobby said, "I'm sorry," in a barely audible whisper. "I'm so sorry." Rei held his head in her arms while she shed tears on his scarred face. "I love you, Toya. Always." A faint sigh was the last breath that left Dobby's body as it became motionless. As they bid him farewell, the family held him close and expressed their unadulterated grief. Kuri stood by herself outside the barrier, watching the family she had grown up with lose their oldest son while tears streamed down her cheeks. She knew that this was not her moment, but she still wanted to intervene and provide some consolation. As she held the barrier steady, her whole body shook and her wings drooped. In a quiet voice, she said, "Goodbye, Toya."
I'll continue this series in next part. Till then, bye bye.